And we are meeting jointly today with the Legislative Education Interim Committee. Today is Thursday, November 20th, and we are meeting at the Missoula County Public Schools administrative buildings in their boardroom. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, will you please call the roll?
Chair Slinger,
Here?
Vice Chair Slinger.
Yeah, thank you. I just got promoted. I didn't realize that.
Leah Maxwell.
Here,
Here. Hannah Neeskin. Natalie Quinlan. Here. Renee Rasmussen.
Here.
Here. Chair Tharp.
Here.
Lydia Comstock. Here. Commissioner Christian's office. Governor Gianforte's office. Superintendent Hedlund's office.
Here.
Thanks. Vice Chair Novak.
Here.
Senator Emmerich. Senator Bryant. Here. Representative Craig, yes, excuse me. Representative Deming.
Here.
Senator Regier.
Excused.
Senator Benton.
Excused.
Representative Romano.
Excused.
Chair Rexton.
Here.
The Board of Public Education encourages the public to participate in board discussions. Persons who wish to participate should sign the public comment sign-in sheet and identify themselves to the board chair or executive director prior to the board's consideration of the matter in which the persons are concerned. Anyone wishing to participate in board discussions will be recognized by the chairperson in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage public comment on personnel matters and ask that you discuss these issues in private with the board chair. The Montana Board of Public Education is a professional development unit provider. Attending a Board of Public Education meeting may qualify you to receive professional development units. Please complete the necessary information on the sign-in sheet if you are applying for professional development units. This time, we welcome any visitors, either in person or online, who would like to introduce themselves at this time. Not necessary, but it's always available. All right, well, we will commence with our agenda. This is unusual for us. It's the first time that I'm aware of that we've ever conducted a joint meeting along with our partners from the legislature. We have several items on our agenda for the balance of the day. These are all obviously informational items, nothing that we'll be taking any votes on, but we're looking forward to a rich discussion back and forth, as many of these things are obviously of interest to both the Board of Public Education and the legislature. I'd like to thank Pat McCracken and his staff for working with McCall Flynn and her staff to coordinate and conduct this joint meeting. We'll begin with item number 12, which is presentation on the Safe School Center survey, and we'll hand it over to our guest presenters.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us in this joint meeting today and dedicating a few minutes for us to talk about HJ 53. My name is Nancy Berg. I'm the director of the Montana Safe School Center.
Tina Hayes, and I'm the Associate Director of the Safe School Center.
Elliot Nelson, Graduate Research Assistant for the Montana Safe School Center.
And so in the last bicameral session, we were able to push forward HJ 53, really doing a school safety study. And one of the things that we were looking at doing and understanding in the state of Montana is that there really isn't this unified, coordinated approach to supporting schools around school safety, having this comprehensive guidance and support. So we wanted to be able to come forward with a school safety study to be able to bring data forward to be like, what does that actually look like in the state of Montana? And so we at the Montana Safe School Center are housed here in the University of Montana and the College of Education. We really want to promote collaboration, partnership, well-being, support for all things K-12 school safety related across the state. So having that larger, broader focus of school safety coordination. And so we'd like to say many thanks to Representative Brad Barker and Representative Connie Keough here for being able to help us move this HJ 53 bill forward. And when we were creating the school safety study to collect data, we were really focusing on the 10 essentials of school safety. And that's how we were able to structure the questions that are coming forward with the study. And so within HJ 53, we were bringing forward some stakeholders to kind of help us think about what questions we wanted to ask. We're really focusing on 10 essentials of school safety, already lined out at a federal level of what can we measure against with what schools are doing around school safety in Montana. We wanted to review best practice and then eventually get to being to the point of analyzing to what degree are Montana schools implementing and kind of understanding this overarching 10 essentials of school safety. And so the study is being collected via online survey. It's going out to public schools, private schools, and charter schools, focused on the 10 essentials. Right now it's consisting of 35 multiple choice and short answer questions. And we're really focusing on those upper level admin principals at that building level who know those intimate details around school safety for their school to be the ones that are answering those surveys. And so if you're not familiar with, we have presented this at the Education Interim Committee, but if you're not familiar with the 10 essentials, it actually does focus on both this physical safety aspect and also this emotional safety aspect. So this questions are kind of within what does comprehensive school safety and assessment look like for your school? What are you doing around campus, building, classroom security? There are within these two, physical safety and emotional safety, some questions we didn't ask because we know that some of those data sets are already being collected. So if you think about schools climate, schools are already required by the Office of Public Instruction to collect school climate data. So we can go ahead and suck in that already existing data set. Additionally, with mental health resources, we didn't ask questions around mental health resources because the school administrators of Montana already did that collective survey. So that allowed us to kind of keep it at a shorter, 35 questions is still a lot, survey for schools. And we did ask kind of demographic data, sending surveys via email, and then we are kind of following up with a phone call and gently bugging people to fill out the survey when we see them, when we go to trainings around the state. The survey was actually initially kicked out here October 31st, and we're gonna keep it open until the end of the 26 school year and just kind of gently bug folks to fill it out. And we're tracking who did or didn't fill out that survey. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the survey, and then my colleague Tina Hayes is going to go ahead and walk us through that.
So far we've gotten about 50 responses from both private and public schools. Some of the interesting data that we're pulling already is with the emergency operations plan. That most schools do have an emergency operations plan, but they do not follow the FEMA or Federal Emergency Management Agency guidelines, which is concerning if we do have a federal disaster and they seek reimbursement. So having a universal template that they can use, it's available online, but it is a process to go through and update an emergency operations plan. Next one was behavioral threat assessment and management. The information that we gathered from the behavioral threat assessment and management was quite interesting in the fact that we have a lot of schools that do not understand what a threat assessment process and procedure is, which it is required by law. Passed by Senate Bill 213 in 2023, requires every school to have a threat assessment policy and procedure. And what we are finding is they will answer yes, but the information that they provide us with the tool is not a threat assessment tool. I think, what is the large percentage? Yeah. So we're trying to reach as many schools as we possibly can to train on behavioral threat assessment. and management, but, as you can see, we have a limited number of staff, that can hit all 944 schools. But, it is concerning since it is a law and it is required that we have a lot of schools that still are not completing threat assessments. And then the last thing we wanted to touch on is the social media monitoring. Most schools do not have social media monitoring. And the other concerning part is not having social media monitoring on their devices, and what's happening in schools. So, we are gathering a lot of great information. We can't wait to provide you with a detailed report with all of this. And we continue to encourage schools to fill out this information and while we're educating them at the same time. Any questions?
Yeah, one survey per school, who are you targeting to
It-
fill it out?
It is one survey per school. Interestingly, we have gotten some schools that more than one person has filled it out. And interestingly, those answers are completely different. So
Question.
yes, so we have had superintendents, we have had principals, we have had head teachers because most of our schools are rural. So we have lead teachers or head teachers. We have had a counselor fill it out. But it is very interesting. That is something that we'll put in our report is the understanding of school safety between the principal, the superintendent, and the individuals who are implementing it.
Who have you marketed this to? Because I haven't seen this. I'm a county superintendent.
So we started out with principals first, because what we find is those principal level, at that principal level, they have more information about the safety that's going on in their building. And then we are branching out. So we will then be going to superintendents, county superintendents, and counselors as well.
Dr. Neeskens.
It appears most of your data is school level driven, so are you disseminating between elementary, middle, and high school data?
We will break out that data, once we do the final report, but we are sending it to all schools.
Legislators, please feel free to jump in. Not quite as formal as legislative hearings, but just raise your hand, let me know. And also note for our legislative friends, when you're back at the Capitol, these little lights are green, here they're red, but the same buttons operate the same way. Senator Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question to clarify then. So you said you started with principals and then you'll be branching out. So at our very most rural schools that don't have on-site administration, did you send those to the teachers already?
We sent those to the lead teachers. So we, luckily OPI has a list that we utilize. I mean, it's sometimes updated, really well, sometimes it's not. So, we're just trying to make sure that every school has the opportunity to fill out the survey. And yeah, so we sent it to lead teachers and, the person who was listed for OPI as the person in charge.
Great, thank you.
Member Maxwell.
Thank you. I am a school superintendent slash principal slash everything else. I was wondering for my colleagues that I was one of those schools that did not know how to do a threat assessment. I had to go out on my own because it's not part of our education as educational leaders, unfortunately. What are some, are you guys providing any training or at least act like this is where you can go to get training on how to do that effectively? A lot of our small schools don't have it's really hard for us to miss a day. So any resources that were already available for us to look into would be really helpful.
Yes, so we provide actually a BTAM training and coaching model. So we walk schools through, because you can choose whatever model you want, we provide you with lots of examples and you decide as a team. But we have a pretty solid coaching model that we walk schools through. We help you pick out the tool that you want to use. We help train your teachers. The missing link that we have found as we have gone out and done lots of training on behavioral threat assessment and management is kids don't have that expectation laid out for them. So working on doing a training for kids to understand, you know, if you make a threat, this is what will happen. because we forget to do that sometimes. And the other piece that we found was teachers don't necessarily identify threats all the same way. So getting everybody on the same page so that we're all doing this together so that we can help prevent targeted violence. So we do provide free training, and we're available for any school. So they just need to contact us.
Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a school superintendent until 5 years ago, and we went through a huge threat assessment, multiple days over several years, lots of trainings to students, staff, and admin, which resulted in a comprehensive plan. How old? But that plan is probably 8, 9 years old now. I don't know if they've kept it up because I'm not there anymore. So how old are you expecting your plans to be? And are you accepting any plans other than just yours? For instance, there was a huge grant gotten by a school in our area, and we went through the NRA School Safety Shield grant program, and it was quite extensive. Are you accepting any other plans besides your own?
So the plans, can I get a clarifying, can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Are you talking about the emergency operations plan or the safety plan, or are you talking?
Eventually they became they became together. You know, we did both together, but there was a school safety plan and there was an emergency operations plan, both.
Okay, so for the emergency operations plan, we just recommend using FEMA because if there is a federal disaster, you are more likely to be reimbursed quicker. And historically, hospitals that have used FEMA templates get actually more money. So we don't require anybody to use any sort of designated plan. We just encourage that. Because it's best practices. And schools have all sorts of different plans. The threat assessment policy and procedure has to be listed in your emergency operations plan. And that is based off of the Senate Bill 213 that requires that. Did I answer your question?
Not really, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, and it should be updated every year. So the school board of each school is required to sign off on the emergency operations plan, which is listed in Senate Bill 213 as well. So it should be updated annually.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, again, I'm surprised. I haven't seen anything on this. I just shot a quick message back to the 2 schools that I oversee to see if anybody has seen anything on this. So I'm just curious about the timeline for your ongoing efforts to share this survey out, because this is new to me. But I'm also, question number 34, social media monitoring program. Can you tell me what that means? I mean, I have an idea in my head, but I'm not certain.
So it is a program that would go through information that, like if a child is using a Chromebook, there should be a program on there that is like Bark. Have you heard of Bark? Bark is a social media monitoring program. It is targeted towards parents. It is now targeted towards schools, but basically it goes through, and if there's any information like threat to self, threat to others, it will flag it and then have information sent to the administrator to say, on this computer at this time, at this day, this was looked up. So that's the social media monitoring that we're talking about.
Any other questions?
Would you mind if I take a moment to answer your question about reporting back? So because HJ 53 is designated legislatively, we have every couple of months been coming forward to report out to the Education Interim Committee, because that's who we're designated to report to. So we'll have to have a full report to the Education Interim Committee by September of 2026. So we'll close this survey in June, compile results over summer, and then present to legislative session.
So we had one final question, Board Member Rasmussen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This BARC program, that's done on school computers, not personal computers?
Yes, if it is through the school, it is done.
Are there plans to move it? Are there plans to move it to personal computing that would be purchased and owned by parents or students? Could be.
Well, parents have the option to do it. So you can, parents can download the BARC app and have that installed on their kids' devices. But I don't know of any plans of providing that to parents or to students at no cost. And I don't know of any plans of schools rolling that out to parents as well.
Thank you.
Chair Rexton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is this, being on the Education Interim Committee, we're going to need some recommendations from this survey for possible legislation. And are you going to be presenting us with kind of at least some, obviously, schools are going to be on a range of safety, but what are the critical aspects that must be in place at every school?
Yep, and we'll provide those recommendations because that is also something that's written into HJ 53 as an outcome as a result of the survey. So yeah, being able to bring that forward both with results and then what could potentially be recommended for coming into legislation.
All right, well, thank you for your time and look forward to hearing more results on how the survey turns out. Our next item is item number 13 on our agenda, discussion on teacher and principal preparation and educator pipeline challenges. And we have some members from University of Montana, Montana State University, and Rocky Mountain College on our docket. Dr. Lee, as appearing to be senior member of the panel, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thornton. Thanks for having us here today. It's important for us to have a dialogue about a number of issues that seem to be recurring in our state that are very concerning. And that is the pipeline question. What is the problem, right? Like, we have a lot of programs that train teachers, and still we have a shortage of teachers. And so what we hope today is the three of us. The three of us hope to be able to shed a light on that and also a little bit of discussion about our programs. Dr. Seifert, my colleague, that's you, it's to my right, she has done a fair amount of work preparing a presentation, and I want to kind of turn it over to Tricia a little bit. And then I'd like to return to this pipeline discussion, because I think it's really vitally important we have an honest dialogue about that. So I'll leave you with the presentation.
So being distributed, and thank you so much, Dr. Lee. We have, as the Council of Deans, put together. Dr. Lee, turn this off. Thank you, thank you. A presentation that really highlights strengths, issues, and challenges that our educator preparation programs face. And I really want to highlight the strengths and the opportunities and the ways that we are being successful to meet the moment in preparing teachers and school leaders across the state. And so you'll notice on the first page of that handout that we have 10 accredited programs across Montana. These include 5 at our public universities, 3 at our private universities, and 2 tribal colleges. And so Annually, we submit the number of completers, so students who have completed our program across the endorsement areas. And so that's the sort of towards the very end of your packet, you'll see the number of completers as it pertains over about the last decade. And I share that because I think it's really important to understand how many students are completing our program as opposed to just how many are enrolled in our programs. And why is that important? And it's important because a number of students may change their majors. And so we want to really examine what is the number of students who are completing our programs. And where are these programs? Because by different endorsement areas, and that's really the second page of the presentation, it is at a glance all of the different endorsement areas that you'll see down the left-hand side of that very large table, and our 10 preparation programs there across the columns. And you'll note where there are majors and where there are minors, and how we're really trying to respond to the needs across Montana. Without a surprise, the largest number of our programs prepare students in elementary education, and that's because that's the largest need of an endorsement across the state, as there are many fourth grade, second grade, fifth grade teachers. And so you can see how has that preparation and the number of completers in those areas changed over time. And the very couple top rows on that table towards the back with the number of completers, it specifies how does Montana compare to the country, just in number of total completers. And so it is evident that the pathway into the profession, both in terms of recruitment and retention, is an issue that we need to be addressing, discussing, and thinking most creatively and constructively on how we can together be part of that solution. In between, those pages really identify, and you might be wondering, why did she print this on 11 by 17? It's honestly so that the font was a little larger, because if your eyes are like mine, you can appreciate just a little larger font. And because I know that in your bags, you have a lot of standard size. And I think this presentation is above the standard. And we're really trying to bring it to your attention to share just exactly what are the opportunities and strengths of our programs. Our programs are vast and they are different. They are varied and they meet the needs of our communities. And so today you're going to hear from my colleague, Jody Carlson, to talk about how are they responding in a small private institution in terms of education preparation for both school leaders and for teachers. My colleague from Stone Child College, Dr. Tyner, she would be talking about how are they meeting the needs on their reservation community, as would my colleague Doug Ruman from Salish Kootenai College. Dr. Lee and I will speak to how are we addressing in our largest state flagship universities this opportunity to prepare both school leaders and initial teachers as Class 2 licensed teachers. And so we share this with you so that when you ask, what are our ed prep programs up to? You have a handy document that gives some opportunities to better understand just how we are meeting this moment, and to understand and share with colleagues, neighbors, and others, where do you find these preparation programs? If I wanted to study family consumer science, now some of you are of an age that you remember these are home ec teachers. You study that program at MSU Bozeman. We're the only program in the state that offers that endorsement area. And so it's really important to recognize that in an effort to minimize duplication, particularly in endorsements where there may be a smaller need, we don't have as many programs. And so that family consumer science educators are completing our program at Bozeman. If you're looking for a business teacher, there are other programs that offer that business endorsement, and that's what the second page of the handout really provides. So that gives you an overview of the handout, and now I'm going to pitch it back to Dean Lee to share a little bit more about how are they approaching this moment at University of Montana.
Thank you, Dr. Seifert. Our challenge in our state is really twofold. We hear a lot about teacher preparation. We hear a lot about the teacher shortage and alternative pathways and grow your own, and those are all very important. A multi-pronged approach to dealing with teacher shortage is a good idea. One area that is somewhat neglected is leadership and leadership development. Great schools tend to have sustained, effective leaders. And we suffer a little bit from a fair amount of churn among school leaders, particularly superintendents. You know, Dr. Thorpe's been around much longer than I, but we'll go to meetings and we'll look around the room and think, who are these people? Where did they come from? I've never seen them before. And then they're gone the following year, and then somebody else takes their seat. And you can imagine if you were a teacher in those schools, like, well, gee, we just started on the science of reading last year, and now we're starting over again, you know, and it's hard to make any kind of good gains unless you have sustained leaders. So, you know, we have in our college, we're graduating our first cohort of women leaders this year, a cohort of only women, taught only by women, to be school principals, because we know that there is still a glass ceiling when it comes to school leadership in schools, and it's difficult for women to move up. I was a professor of leadership. I've had some great students who are women who apply for jobs, and they don't have a chance, even in school. They're great people. It's just tough. So our hope is that by graduating our first cohort, we begin to create a network of women across the state who can reach out to each other and say, I was in school with you, if I know you, maybe I can give you a shot, take a chance. We're also beginning to start another cohort of mixed group this year. We're starting to take applications now. And the idea is that we'll get them out of our program, a full master's degree program, in about 18 months. So by moving online, by trying to truncate some of our classes, by going over the summer, we can provide people with a quality leadership program. And I can't emphasize this enough, because it isn't sufficient to get licensed. That should not be the bar. That should not be what I hope for. I just need a minimum, just get my license and I'm in. You need to have the skills to be successful. You need to know what you're doing. And licensure is great, but it's a minimum standard, and we shouldn't be satisfied with a minimum. And then finally, I'll wrap this up by our state continues to need a focus on student achievement. Montana children deserve great future, and the only way Montana children can get that is with a great education. But to do that, we need schools and school leaders who attend to school achievement. We too often hear school leaders saying, I don't have time to pay attention to that. I'm filling out a survey. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm cleaning up after lunch. I was a school principal for almost 20 years, so I know all those things. But it has to be a priority. How are my students doing in math? How are my students doing in reading? Where are the choke points in my school? What do we need to do to change that? What kind of training do our teachers need? You know, I was really thrilled when I heard yesterday that Office of Public Instruction has a great grant of reading, and it's going to promote the science of reading. We do this at our college. National Teacher Quality has rated us A+ in this area. We're proud of that. But school principals and school leaders need to know that, as well as teachers. It isn't sufficient enough for a school leader to say, you go to that training, and I hope it works out. You need to go to that training. You need to be a part. You need to learn. You need to know what's happening in classrooms. So we hope that by creating, and as we do in both of our institutions, strong cohorts of school leaders, we can begin to address this. But the challenges of retaining school leaders, particularly school superintendents, are great. They are difficult, and there are a lot of reasons for it. I mean, I could talk about pay, and I won't talk about pay. You hear that all the time on pay, but I think there's a lot of demands for school leaders now. It's just not about what's inside the building. Their parents have demands, you know, the public has demands. Challenges with maintaining aging buildings. There's a lot to the job. Somehow, though, all of that, we need to create a missionary zeal that I'll stay here for 10 years, and I will make a difference in this school department, and I will make a difference in the achievement of children in this school department. I think that is the key if we really are serious about moving the dial ahead in our state with teacher retention, because it doesn't make any sense to bring a lot of teachers in on alternative pathways and they leave in 3 years, or even teachers trained in our own programs leave in 5. It's a hard job. Not gonna lie, it's a hard job. It's a great job, and I loved it as a teacher. And I cry sometimes in September because I miss starting school again. But without the support of good building leaders and good district leaders, it's harder. And the only way we can stem this is to create great cultures in schools, supportive cultures. And I think that key is in leadership. So we're working hard at our college to address that. I know we're working hard at others across the state, but certainly that is a challenge. I think we need to think about ongoing, not only bringing them in, but how do we constantly do ongoing development for leaders? Sam does a lot of it, school administrators in Montana, but I think we could do a lot as well. And we can do more than what we're doing, and we need to. So we're constantly trying to think of ways that we can fill that gap. Thank you.
I just want to concur with Dr. Lee about the challenges to develop school leaders. I know at Rocky, that's one of the things that has really stood out to us. I'm relatively new in this job, about 1.5 years. When I took over this job, we completely redesigned curriculum to match the NELP standards, which are the preparation standards for our educational leaders. And that was really important to us. And the other thing that we've done at Rocky is just really lean into our stakeholders. And so, you were talking about not knowing that you needed to do a threat assessment. And so we've had deep conversations with those administrators that are working with our programs, our partners, and not just upholding the standards, but trying to understand those needs that are out in the schools in Montana and being able to meet the needs to address those. I think one of the things that has been for us as a challenge is we know there are some really good folks out there that would be wonderful school leaders. And as Dr. Lee talked about, school culture begins with great school leaders. One of the challenges is that our folks that are in our programs are practicing teachers. They're on the job all day. They don't have the finances sometimes to pay for an educational leadership degree. And we've made some great advances, I think, in programs for teachers. OPI's program for highly qualified teachers, helping those students pay those loans back. I think that's something we could help our administrators or future aspiring administrators with as well. I think that there's a desire out to do that. One of the things that Rocky has done as far as an innovation is we have changed our program's flexibility a little bit. Rocky's program has always been an 11-month cohort, and you started in the fall, you finished in the spring, and that was the only time you could enter the program. This fall, we changed that a little bit, so our school administrators can come in at multiple time points during the year and have a more flexible schedule that meets their scheduling needs. It meets financial needs, but it also kind of opens the door for those folks who would like to be school administrators and still pursue that path. We think that this is of key importance, and as Dr. Lee and Dr. Seifert mentioned, the teacher pipeline is really important, but I think we really have come to understand that it is a trickle-down effect, that school leaders, great culture, and that was one of the things that was talked about in our meetings yesterday, is about how teachers that have great leaders and great administrators in their building have a greater likelihood of staying in the job. And so when we can help prepare good school leaders, we are helping students or teachers that will stay in the job longer. And so, that is what we're working on as far as the educational leadership aspect.
I'd like to continue talking about school leaders and some innovations going on at Montana State University in Bozeman. Just last week, we had an article published through MSU News highlighting the $1.7 million grant that Dr. Jason Cummins, who's a new educational leadership faculty member, received from the Federal Department of Education to support the next iteration of the Indian Leadership Education and Development. And so through this grant, we'll be recruiting and preparing 30 teachers to work in Indigenous schools around Montana. And we're so grateful for the support and what it will present in terms of preparing teachers to work on and near reservation schools. But more importantly to that is the connection that this program means in working with our partners on tribal lands. So in collaboration with Little Bighorn College, that's how we prepare and work together to really bring opportunities to bear to the greatest number of people. And when I often speak in front of students, I say our program is known because our students are learning by doing. And so these school leaders are on the jobs and learning by doing, and in the summer, they come together in cohorts to share where were the pain points this past year? What can we expect this coming year? What just happened in the legislative session that I need to be attending to as we move forward? And that is really done in relationship. Because when we're providing and realizing the opportunities of online learning, we also have to attend to the critical needs that people have to build relationships. And that's what happens in those small cohorts in our leadership program in the summer. And you see those cohorts not just in our Ed Leadership program, but in the group of 7, I think it was 10 physical education teachers, pre-service teachers, who recently presented at a statewide conference in Wyoming. And I just have to read, I quote, the comments afterwards in presenting at the statewide conference. Our faculty member was told, "We could see you loved what you're doing, and your students' confidence while presenting was amazing." Teachers saying, "Having spent a time in the workshop that your students led, I can't wait to use these ideas in my classroom. I love getting activities that I can implement immediately." These are students who aren't teachers yet. They're preparing to be teachers. And and I quote my colleague Kari Orador said, "We won the conference because not only did we win them in Wyoming, but they were begging us to come to Nebraska and present and to come to Utah's conference and present." And it's because these students are practicing the craft of teaching from the very first semester. When they're a student at MSU Bozeman, they're in small schools through our teaching and learning program. They're starting to do service learning in that very first semester, and it continues throughout. Our students are learning by doing in all of our practical experiences, and that is something that you just can't discount. You can't be a teacher if you're not doing the work. You can't teach if you haven't practiced it. And so I think it's so important as we look at our accredited programs and how we are now largely through the legislature's gifts of the teacher residency, now expanding and providing even richer clinical experiences where students can be paid for an entire year of student teaching. And so I think that's what is really essential about our accredited programs, is that clinical experience in the field, working with real kids, struggling right alongside them as they're starting to learn how to read, and how can we help them in that reading. Those teachers make a difference every day. And I bet every one of you can think of a teacher who made a difference in your life. Whenever I'm in front of a group of students, I ask them, who is the teacher that believed in you on the days you didn't believe in yourself? And to a student, they can name one. I bet money all of us can. And so it is with that this is the zeal. I mean, this is why I get up in the morning, is because teachers make a difference in our lives. And you all have made a difference. And so as we think together, and we must think together creatively and constructively, because we know that there are more teacher positions than there are currently teachers filling them. It's why we're seeing an increase in education, in emergency authorizations of employment in our youngest grades. And my colleague and friend Dean Lee often says, students only get first grade once. And if you only get first grade once, my goodness, you really need to have a teacher who understands how to help you learn how to read. And so we need to have just the very best, fully trained and prepared students who are teachers in those classrooms. And so we thank you for being part of that constructive, creative thinking alongside us, because we really have to do this together.
Board Member Rasmussen, you have your hand up. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just really following the conversation about leadership because I was one of those women leaders for 15 years. When I started being a superintendent, there were about 20 of us when we went to meetings. There were about 20 women superintendents. By the time I left in 15 years, there was about 4 in the room. And I think that women face unique challenges. I know that a lot of people won't agree with me, but I do believe they will. My concerns are that you are looking at some of the real reasons that leadership doesn't last, because boards and communities aren't always understanding that a leader doesn't come out perfectly trained, that they need to have continuing education, and they need to continually grow. And that is something that I think that both boards and communities, because some communities, one that I served in, expected their superintendent in the building every single day. That makes it hard to go to conferences and get additional learning. I think that that's something that needs to really be communicated in a more precise and meaningful way. I'm also concerned because when there's a problem in the school, rather than the board standing with the superintendent, many times they just let the superintendent take the blame, and there's no option but to leave, and that's not a good thing. Those problems can and should be worked through, and that means that there needs to be additional awareness and understanding that one person is not in control of everything. I think that the by nature of the job, and I'm sure that every superintendent in that room will back me up, the job is isolating, and there's few people that really understand what it's about. So I'd like to see that as you support and as you train superintendents, that you're realistic about the challenges. But I think we need to go further and really train because you're right. A school only survives on long-term leadership. I was fortunate enough to serve 6 years in one school and 9 years in another school and retire on my own timeline. And I saw the benefit of the schools around me who were churning superintendents versus the ability that I had to continue programs from year to year. So I just want to make those statements. I do not envy you your job of training superintendents, because first of all, the temperament to do that job is something that needs to be examined as well. And I just really want to thank you for your attention to this. It's needed to be done for a long time. When I watch those women in positions of superintendency dwindle from about 20 in the room to about 4, that worries me a lot.
Thank you, Board Member Rasmussen. Dr. Slinger?
Thank you, Chair Thayer. So, Board of Public Ed doesn't have the gift of appropriation, wish we did. But I'm very fascinated, and I think at any level of any organization, the longer the tenure of the CEO, the better, the more healthy the organization, and the more they can thrive. So I think the legislator, our colleagues here today, have done a phenomenal job in incentivizing and moving with teachers' pay and trying to help out on that end. Perhaps we could encourage them to consider same type of incentives for longevity and incentives to go into the programs. Because if we're pulling administrators or administrator candidates from high school teacher roles, we already know those pays are not high. For them to then take on the additional burden of the cost of a master's degree and the training program and so forth. So I could see incentive scholarships to incentivize them to go into administration, but I think it'd be a fascinating conversation, and I have no idea how to develop it, nor do I want to. But I know we have very smart people in the room that could. How do we incentivize school districts to the point where once your superintendent has been there 5 years, there's an incentive bonus funding? Okay, either to help that superintendent or fund the school district. At 10 years, is there another incentive funding? Because you're funding stability. And as you mentioned, we complimented Superintendent Firthmeyer yesterday for the School of Deaf and Blind. They just did their cognitive accreditation report. In there, I specifically said, throughout the report, they bragged about the culture and the climate. Okay, it's incredibly important. That's what retains teachers, culture and climate. Okay, and if we could build that same type of incentive, okay, so it's either eliminate barriers to go into leadership and then incentivize them to stay. Because again, you can look at, I'm from higher ed, you look at higher ed, the schools that are thriving are the ones that have had leaders consistently stay and grind and just build a culture and move forward with a shared vision. That's what we need our K-12s. And I agree with you. I try to serve all of Eastern Montana, and every time I show up at a superintendent's meeting, every year it's half the room's new. There's such turnover, such churn. If we could eliminate that turnover and start building stability in there, I think it'd be fascinating to see, track those schools. And it would also be fascinating, more work for someone else to do. It'd be fascinating to see the scores of schools, proficiency scores of schools based on tenure of leadership. Wouldn't that be interesting to see? Are those schools performing higher than the other ones that are, you said, teacher shows up, oh, when I was new, there's a new principal, new superintendent every year. I just think there's a lot of work to be done in this. I would love that the Education and Recreation Committee's here, because they do have the magic, the gift of appropriation and bills and things. I would just encourage you to look at these and try to come up with some solutions on some ways of doing it. You did a wonderful job of the STARS Act. Maybe there's a STARS Act version for administration. I don't know.
Retired Superintendent Rexton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of thoughts, as a retired superintendent of two districts, 7 years total. There is a real need for supporting these people in the field. Of course, I came from another state that closely monitored, the superintendent was really responsible for monitoring the principals. And what I discovered actually in two different districts is this real lack of principal training in actual instructional leadership. There's a real lack there. Where we had to retrain teachers in the science of reading in one of my districts. I literally could not get those principals to sit through that training, so they understood how to evaluate the instruction that they were supposed to oversee in the classroom. And this is really critical. And a lot of our superintendents don't know how to evaluate their own administrators. There has to be more training on the score. Because it's not just a question of evaluating somebody's faults, but it's also recognizing the strengths and the growth and the successes, because the superintendent is to be a cheerleader for everybody being successful in the organization. And that is very, very difficult, you know, coming from another state where we were very closely monitored and very closely trained and mentored to a state where there was very little mentoring. Was very challenging for me personally. Because then you are isolated. And, you know, you just look forward to going to superintendent meetings just so you could talk to people. And just share ideas and so forth. So I'm not sure how to do that, but I think that is a chore for Montana School Boards Association to start supporting their superintendents in a way that that will keep them towards longevity, understanding that if you disagree with or with what your superintendent is doing, because you're listening to staff tell you that they're doing this, thus and so, is dividing the support that you need and longevity for actually keeping somebody. And I found among 2 districts that oftentimes board members will listen to teachers and or the public and about complaints about the one you hired. We've really got to close those gaps. We've got to, you're not going to keep people if you you continue to criticize their efforts. Even the most talented people are going to leave. So these are just some thoughts that I have in just coming from another area into our state. And, you know, I love Montana. 2/3 of my education career was here. And I was born and raised here. So I just think we have a long ways to go to support these people. And I'm not talking just superintendents, I'm talking principals, I'm talking teachers. You know, there's the idea that you can just get in there and do things. You can't do that anymore. We had a couple of bills. Representative Romano's bill on the BEST program should have passed. Because we need mentoring, we need support. We didn't have a bill for principals, but we probably should have a bill to mentor principals. I know Sam has done you know, as well of a job as they could. But I mean, we're not supporting the whole system is what I'm trying to get at. And that has to change.
Thank you, Dr. Reskin, and I appreciate your years of service. As I look around the room, there's at least 7 of us superintendents, but the majority of us are retired and no longer doing it. One current active superintendent, Dr. Neeskens.
Thank you. I would like to comment with actually my hat on as working for the Ed Leadership Department at Montana State University, where I'm privileged to actually teach a superintendent's preparation course and a principal's preparation course. I think, however, the demographics of my students actually really highlight how dire the situation is that you're all talking about. And so I'd like to tell you about the students that I taught this past summer in the superintendent's preparation program. I had 14 students in the finance and facilities course, which is required in order to get your licensure as a superintendent in the state of Montana. Just the fact that there was only 14 students in that course is alarming because we know that there are more than 14 superintendent vacancies across the state of Montana. However, what was even more alarming to me was 11 of the 14 students in the class already had a job as a superintendent, and they were learning and building the airplane as they were flying. So they had either already been in the superintendency for 1 year or 2 years, and they were desperate for information that would help them to do their jobs more effectively and to reduce the amount of struggles they had just by being thrown into the position by virtue of there being such a shortage that they basically had to get licensed as they were doing the job. So really, when you think about it, only 3 of those students that I encountered are now in the new superintendent pool of possible candidates who have received training before they enter the profession. And this really fundamentally for me was such a shift from when I went through that very same course. I'm not gonna say how long ago, but it was a while ago. And at that time, we were all teachers aspiring to be principals, and then for the superintendent classes, we were all principals aspiring to be superintendents. We were not actually in the position as we were taking the coursework. And this is just fundamentally different now. And so it really caused for me a shift in how am I going to meet the needs of these students who are already doing the job. And whereas the class I took was, 70% theory and 30% applied practicum, I shifted the course, to where it was reversed. I'm really teaching you applied application-based skills, and we're gonna do less on theory because really that's not what you need in this moment. So I think as we think about how do we meet the needs of people where we're at, it's so important to realize that the population that we're servicing in these programs is in large part doing the job already. And that must fundamentally change how we teach courses and how we approach supporting these people. One thing I also learned is not every district was paying for their superintendent to take those courses. Some people were still paying out of pocket to get the training to do the job that they'd already been hired to do. Some districts did not pay for the week that they had to be on MSU's campus. They did not pay for any of their expenses. Some districts did. And so there's just ways, I think, at the local level to express support for your superintendent and the person that's in the job to get the training that they need. And certainly there's ways that we could look at as a state to similarly support those people. So thank you for the opportunity to offer my perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Neeskens. Board Member Maxwell.
I support your thought about principals. My principal's really annoying. She drives me nuts. I'm the principal also. Let's just make it clear. I actually fit the brief that Ms. Neeskens said. I was hired as a principal, and that summer they said, hey, we have to hire another person, so we need a superintendent. Here's the program, go do it. So I was definitely learning how to be a principal and then had to learn how to be a superintendent. Luckily, I had a great group of Northwest Mass people. My biggest thing was in looking at our school records for Marion School since 1970 something odd. I am the longest tenured principal in their history, and this is my 4th year. Well, I'm in tie for Miss Sherry Stobie, but she's amazing. So, but that's saying something for a small district. That's a lot of turnover. Just the growth from beginning baby principal to now, I'm a completely separate leader. It's completely different. And I can't imagine having to start over. I believe that the turnover is a big problem for schools and students, but it's also a big problem for the profession as a whole, because teachers now see admin as a separate entity. They do not see that we are teachers that loved teachers so much. We wanted to help teachers. We wanted to help kids, help teachers, help kids. And they see them as adversaries that are disconnected. We need to maintain that we're not being disconnected with our staff. Superintendents should be seen just as often in the classroom as principals are. And I know that's darn near impossible, but we need to do our best to stay connected. But we need to find a way to bridge the gap so that teachers feel like we are teachers too. Because it makes teachers not want to go into admin. I get a lot of, well, that's what you're paid for. That's your job. I never could be, I never want to be. And unfortunately, it's always from the people that I see as potentially being some of the greatest leaders that Montana could offer, and they're just not seeing the value in the job because they don't want to be seen as an adversary from their cohort, their coworkers.
Thank you, Julia. And looking at the title of our time here, pipeline challenges, and I think of, if there's a pipeline issue, you look to where the leaks might be. Has anybody done any postdoc research possibly on superintendent satisfaction, why they're leaving the profession, and what are their reasons for that, whether it's principals or superintendents leaving?
The number one reason, national evidence is salary. But, money is, we all know that money is important, but money isn't the great satisfier. Sense of belonging, sense of efficacy. I mean, we can Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I want to talk about Marion for a minute because it reminds me of when I became first time as a principal and a superintendent. I worked in very small districts. And what they never taught me in my program was the most important thing I could do in that school is to get to know the community and be a part of that community, and see people at church, see people in the grocery store, go to a bean supper, whatever it is, you need to be a part of your community. We don't teach that in traditional programming, but it's so important because it makes you human. And the second issue I think is that boards are ill-trained to supervise. So you get elected, I have never met a board member who wants to do bad when they get elected. They want to do good things for boys and girls in their schools. But soon it becomes difficult, And my experience has been, I'm sure all of you who've been successful superintendents, when I can build a level of trust with my board and they trust me, it's when they have a question, they call me and I call them when there's a problem. We soon build a level of trust that we can work together, and we don't always agree, but we agree on one thing, that the school department is more important than anything else that we do. And everything we do is in that endeavor, right? It's for children in our schools. We need more training in those areas. Those are soft skills, but they're incredibly important skills. It is important to know budgeting. It's important to know facilities, but really, in my career, I've done work with facilities. It's an ongoing thing. But what's more important is that I know the names of the children in the school. I know the parents' names. I know the grandparents' names. I know where they live, and they know where I live. And so they'll knock on, in small districts, they'll knock on your door and say, Johnny left his boots in the school and it's snowing outside. Can you unlock the school for me? And it's Sunday, and the right answer is yes. So I think we need to review training, particularly in our state. We're a handshake state, particularly in the East. We can't train principals like urban principals. It's not the same. It's not an 8-to-5 job. It's a 7-day-a-week job. They know your family. They know your kids if they're in school. And so I think we need to double down on that kind of work, frankly. And I don't think we've done it. Honestly, I'm like criticizing my program. We have not done a great job in that area.
I appreciate that observation. I reflect upon the number of transitions I've made from the classroom to principal, superintendency in different jobs, and not a single one of those transitions was due to money. There were many other factors there, mostly around support. So, yes, Senator Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just say thank you for being here and thank you for tackling this. I know as a special ed director, you speak to my heart, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm looking on a regular basis to get out of the field because, well, and I think this week was particularly rough, I would say, but it's not just me. There's a group chat, right, where we have colleagues that are trying to pump each other up and keep each other going. So it is a chronic issue across the state for sure. So thank you for tackling it. I just want to bring this back around to the pipeline conversation and really more, I think, specifically to teacher pipelines. But I look at this chart on page 2, which I appreciate you for putting that together for us, that lists where you can get the different degrees and endorsement areas. And my question is, have you as collective university campuses, and maybe this needs to be addressed tomorrow, but have you had conversations about how you could potentially collaborate together. And what I mean by that is, maybe it's a personal preference, maybe it's a program, maybe it's a region, like what's accessible. But if you can major in education at the campus of your choice, can you work with other campuses to complete the degree and get the endorsements? My specific example is my special education supervisor license, right? That's through MSUB. It's the only place to get it. But all the admin courses are through your choice of either MSU, or Rocky. And then once they transfer in, but then the certificate is awarded from MSUB. Have we looked at doing that on the undergrad level to build the pipeline?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator Novak. You know, one of the things that I love about Montana is how collaborative our ed prep programs are. Recently, we hosted at MSU in Bozeman, the Rural Schools Collaborative, and people from all over the country came in for a day to hear what we're doing to support rural schools and to prepare teachers for rural school districts. And to a person, they could not believe that our dean's group gets together quarterly to talk about how we can collaborate. They're from states where there's competition between their ed prep programs. So the fact that our field placement folks are on the phone with one another to say, hey, I have a student who really is looking to student teach in your area. Can you help me with a placement? I mean, that is an everyday occurrence. If a student calls one of our programs and says, and this happens often in business, I really want to become I want to teach business. We don't have that endorsement area. We have the same sheet that you have right in front of us, and we can say, here are the programs you need to contact. Through 2+2 agreements, working with our community colleges and tribal colleges, all of us have articulation and transfer agreements such that if you complete 2 years at Miles Community College, you can bring that in hand in glove and it will count for 260 credits towards a degree program in our institutions. And I think that's part of that collaboration. Many of us are out on the road on a regular basis visiting. I went out to see Dr. Slinger last spring and last fall because we were building out that 2+2 agreement. And so I think that the collaboration around how to get the program you need in the way that best serves you is one of the greatest examples of what makes Montana unique. I will throw out a shameless plug for a perfect example of this 2+2 agreement. We know that students cannot always pick up and move to Bozeman or move to Missoula. They have families and farms and relationships and ranches in eastern Montana or up on a reservation. And we knew that students in Blackfeet at Browning are not going to be able to complete their degree in Bozeman by leaving home. And so our 2+2 agreement is bringing the U to you, where you live, in doing culturally sustaining and place committed education right there in Browning, using the indigenous knowledge and the strengths of that community while bringing that final 2 years of coursework so that people can become licensed teachers right there at home in their communities where they're going to stay because they've been there for millennia. And so I just really lift up and amplify the kind of collaborative work that we're doing every day across the state in our programs. It's the default, not the unusual.
Well, thank you for that answer. Yeah, we could go on another 2 hours just talking about the pipeline for special ed directors and co-op directors as well. But that is a whole other need in Montana as well. Well, I want to thank our representatives from the 3 universities. We are up against a time certain event here. Our next item is a break, and we're going to be just heading outside here for transformational learning grant observation. So I want to thank the 3 of you fine educators for all of your continued support and collaboration. So, all right, we're just going to stand in recess for 15 minutes, and we will reconvene at 2:45.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Great. Thank you.
Call this meeting back to order. This is a joint meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education, and we are meeting alongside the Legislative Education Interim Committee. We'll continue with our agenda. We are on item number 14, a future ready update, and ask the Superintendent Susie Headland for an update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am excited to share with you that the Commissioner's Office, OCHI, Commissioner Christensen has been working closely with us. Our teams have been working side by side to review the STARS Act ever since the passage of House Bill 252. We've been working closely together and collaborating. Specifically today, I wanted to mention the Future Ready update and the industry recognized credentials that will allow schools to obtain funding for ensuring that this work is taking place and we're better preparing our students for their future. So, as you all know, there were 3 agencies charged with facilitating components of the Future Ready payment. All of us, OPI, OCHI, and DLI, to collaborate on the credentialing list. DLI putting that into rule, and we have recently submitted comment. They quickly got that put into rule, and we worked together to review that. Our teams put together a list and compared that with what we had at the Office of Public Instruction, as well as what OCHI had as a list of nearly 200 credentials that have been vetted by both industry professionals and associations that are specifically intended for high school students. Additionally, something that we wanted to point out was the stackability of credentials, as it is essential for students learning about work in a specific field to enter the workforce prepared. So a few things that we pointed out that I wanted to touch on. We submitted our public response, which we have copies of available if anyone would like to review. And these went directly to the Department of Labor and Representative Jones, the bill sponsor, for review as the public comment period opened. So OPI and OCHI recommended DLI recognized credentials or combinations that aid in career exploration while providing industry validated workforce ready skills. We understood the point of the legislation mandating 3 credit increments. We strongly agree and understand the importance of making sure that it's something that is truly worthwhile and meaningful and has enough to move a student forward. However, we want to make sure that some of these very important skills can be stacked and that students get honored for the great work that they're doing, as well as schools for offering these programs that can be very helpful and just may take some stacking to get to that 3 credits for a high school student is much different than a college student. So things like OSHA, which we all know is very important in the workplace, and for a student to have, however, may not meet a 3 credit threshold. So if there's ways we can combine these important credentials that our schools are offering and students find value in, even in getting, obtaining a job later in high school, or if they are going into college, we wanted to make sure those were able to be stackable. We recognize a wide array of industry recognized credentials and adopting flexible credit systems that value both specialized and cross-disciplinary skills. We want to empower students to be informed in their career decisions and equip them for success in a changing workforce, which aligns with the legislature's intent to strengthen education. So we want to make sure that students have the opportunity, while we're doing these school visits and hearing, even from some of the folks that are in this room, and you'll hear from on the charter school discussions later, we often hear from the students that they started down one pathway and found out that that was not right for them, that was not the right path for them. And so then to switch gears and be able, while they're in high school, to have an opportunity to do that rather than later on in life when it's at a much, more costly expense to them and their families to to change directions. We think that there's value in that and making sure that students have that opportunity to explore multiple careers and opportunities. So just some of the components that we really thought about, and some that stood out to me were the components of stackability and just making sure, you know, as we have talked to the Department of Labor about and the commissioner and her team, it's important that we are going to have the opportunity to revisit this list and continue building on it, because we have so many great, unique programs that are truly worthy of credentials and a pipeline to our workforce in different areas of Montana. I was at EconoQuest with students and with Bill from Space Force. I didn't realize they were operating Space Force. And they have curriculum for that for students out of Wolf Creek, Montana, for example. And what an incredible industry for a student to start a career in aerospace. So we want to make sure that things aren't left off that are a real career opportunity for our students in Montana and that are unique to each of their individual communities. So my goal and you know, Ochi's goal in providing this information is just making sure that we are providing a voice from the field, from, you know, the P20 world, as well as making sure that all of the different components that higher ed 2 and 4 year colleges have to offer, even to our high school students, are considered. I want to make sure that the great programs that our high schools have in place are recognized, and that we don't have any negative impacts through this work of persuading students away from something or closing down programs that students were finding value in or communities were finding a pipeline for a workforce in. So just making sure that we have true collaboration amongst all 3 of our agencies, and that we have educators' voice at the table. We really want to make sure that what we put in place is achievable by our schools and can truly be implemented to honor our students and schools and their work and efforts, while maintaining that legislative intent. So we did respond with our a joint response from the Office of Public Instruction and the Commissioner of Higher Education's office, signed by myself and Commissioner Christensen. So I just wanted to share that with all of you at the board meeting, and I did talk to Ochi about that. Obviously, he's in the Board of Regents meeting right now, so I said I'd pass that information along, and you know, just wanted to reiterate that we're collaborating and working together at a higher level than has been done before. It's been an incredible experience. One of my top priorities is to increase opportunities for our students in Montana in college and career readiness. And I think all of us share that goal, and it's just an energizing and exciting time that we're all coming together to do that. We have new data modernization that's allowing that and going to drive that. We're going to have data behind the decisions that we're making. We have new tools for schools to use to track all of the different opportunities, platforms for students to see what is available to them across the state of Montana as well as the nation. We have tools for the educators to use to access all of these different components. So really excited to share more about that, and I stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Superintendent Hedlund. And I've got to agree, in 35 years, I've never seen this level of collaboration occurring between Ochi and OPI, and then, you know, considering our last presentation, the various departments of ed leadership throughout the state, and looking around the table here, meeting jointly with the legislature. It's very refreshing to see everybody working on the same page, so all working toward those same goals together rather than separately. Anybody have any questions for Superintendent Hedlund? All right, well done, thank you. We will move on to our next item. We are on item number 15, School Funding Interim Commission update. And several people here at the table are also members of the School Funding Interim Commission, but person we lead on the most for that is Pat McCracken. So I'm going to give Pat the mic here and give us an update. And then other members who are on that commission, please feel free to pipe in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Pat McCracken. I'm the Deputy Research Director at Legislative Services and staff, along with my colleague Becca Brown and other staff, the School Funding Interim Commission, which is often referred to as the decennial study. It's the 10-year review of the school funding formula. The 2025 legislature amended the statute that establishes and directs the School Funding Interim Commission to, for this iteration of the study, prior to the examination of the funding formula and an analysis of the needs and costs of the basic system of elementary and secondary schools in Montana, to first take a look at the system itself and to look at the outcomes that high-performing jurisdictions around the world are getting in their education systems, and to think deeply about how Montana's education system might evolve in some ways to increase our student achievement and especially close what we all know to be really stubborn achievement gaps. We call that phase one of the commission's work, and I think there's been a lot of sort of angst around with folks about like, well, when are they going to get to the funding commission? And the statute directs us to do phase one before phase two. And so we're getting there. Phase one is statutorily required to wrap up with a report by the end of January. The commission contracted with an organization called the National Center for Education and the Economy that has supported the work of states doing very similar work in the last decade, beginning with Maryland about 10 years ago. And so that's happening with phase one. And meanwhile, we're developing, the commission is a 20-member commission, developing the commission's understanding of the current funding formula. We're hearing from various stakeholders and organizations about specific concerns with the current funding formula. And I think the commission is going to outline its phase two work in the next coming months. And with that, Mr. Chair, I think I'll stop and let commissioners weigh in.
Representative Deming.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm on that School Funding Interim Commission, and one of the things I found very interesting, we hear from people all the time, administrators, teachers, and parents, their needs, and so we've spent considerable time making sure that we understand what those needs are and what the kinds of things that we can help mitigate some of those needs. And so that would be the second phase, right? But during the first phase, we went out on roadshows and asked communities to kind of give us their input, what they need. And almost universally, I've heard the complaint, and I share that. We didn't get very much input. And I'm kind of disappointed in that, to be honest with you. We needed to know a little bit more from people on the ground, and particularly those that are in the professions. What do you need? What are the problems? How can we fix it? So we're not flying blind by any means, but it sure would have helped to have more input. That being said, I think that the commission itself represents an enormously wide range of experts in the field. I think there must be hundreds and hundreds of years of experience on that commission, and so I think you can trust their judgment when it comes to these kinds of things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Deming. Senator Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have much to add other than I would say that I think it's been really helpful when we have the practitioner panels and we get to hear directly from teachers, admin. I particularly enjoyed hearing from the students last week. So I think getting the voices in addition to the roadshow from those panels are really important. And I think just keep spreading the word to folks on the ground to be paying attention. And exercise that public participation so that they can have a voice in it as well.
Thank you, Senator. Superintendent Headland also serves on the School Funding Interim Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a note. We are excited to start talking about the funding portions of it, but it has been very informative and interesting to hear from the folks across Montana about school funding. And I appreciate what the outreach that has been done to make sure that there's a lot of opportunities for people to comment and have a voice in that. I think that it's been interesting to hear from our school clerks as well. We all know that we're, in a critical time right now of trying to find school clerks. And the fact that our current school funding formula is so complex does not make that any easier. So I think that having a more transparent funding formula will be very helpful for our school clerks, us as school administrators. Every time you get a new school board member, thank you to those of you who serve on school boards, for example. There's a lot to think about in those components. And I think we've also heard how different the needs are for our schools across the state of Montana, and the different challenges that they face, some in common and some very unique, some facilities, some more so salary-based or teacher housing based, some needing curriculum, some needing professional development. So I think allowing that local control and that flexibility for the school leaders and the communities to decide where they need to, address their challenges and have the funds to do so is really important. So I just look forward to keeping transparency and flexibility in mind as we move forward. I appreciated hearing from the panels as well. Hearing the mental health concerns from the students was huge. That came up very strongly. Hearing about the need for educator prep more strongly in facing those kinds of needs, as well as the behavior challenges we've seen increase, which I know our university systems, our ed prep programs are doing a great job to address. So those are just some things that have stood out to me. And I thank you and your team for organizing those and bringing us all together for these important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Headland. The commission is made up of 12 legislators. And then there are 4 people named in it by statute: the presiding officer of the Board of Public Education, the state superintendent, representative from Ochi, which is Clay Christians, and then also a governor's representative. And then there are 4 other people that are appointed by the legislature as well, 4 other lay people from the field. And 2 of them are very active in schools. One of them is the superintendent of Savage Public Schools, and the other one is the business manager for Bozeman. And so we really have got great input from all of the different organizations. Of course, we have Senator Novak representing not only her Senate district, but as a special ed director. We've got Masville present at the table. We've got many of us are prior or current SAM members. And so there's a rich array of that. Representative Deming, a long career in education himself. And so we've got a lot of people with all those different backgrounds and trying to do the same thing, trying to elevate education and get things improved. But and I think we've made some great progress. I'm feeling very good about where we've gone with things. A lot of the discussions have served to elevate the great work that's already being done. I don't think that many of the people on the commission knew about the details of the latest accreditation changes, and so they learned about the portrait of a graduate. You've learned about what we've been doing, and the student panel that we had last week was very impressive. And I shared with the rest of the committee that they had an opportunity to see what we get to see when we went out and toured those schools this morning, and what we get to see when we have students and student panels that appear before us. We see the great work that's being done out there, and it's not the gloom and doom that so often we hear about on social media and in other media outlets. And so there's a lot of great work that's happening, but it does come down to what do we want to see and how are we gonna fund it? And so, and like, as Pat described, phase one is, well, what do we want to see? And how do we characterize that? And I know, yeah, everybody's itching to get to, okay, we want to see the dollars. How much are you gonna put into it? And we've had no shortage of suggestions about which buckets to fund and how to make that happen, but where do we go from here? And our next steps is where things are likely to probably get a little bit more contentious as it rolls forward. Other comments from anybody? Yes. Board Member Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Pad. So the consultants that you brought in from the NCEE have presented to the committee, plus made several presentations in the past to our constitutional players about the characteristics of high performing systems. So my question is, in phase one, is there an attempt to look at which characteristics we have, how well we have them in the state, where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses relative to those characteristics of high performing systems? To me right now, that seems to be lacking. And I just would like to see if there's a way to see how we measure up in that regard.
Mr. Chairman and Board Member Quinlan, as Dr. Tharp acknowledged, it's hearing what some best practices in high performing jurisdictions look like has served to reinforce that, you know, you could see around the room as some of these things were being described, people kind of saying, hey, aren't we doing that? Or doesn't that sound a whole lot like this? And the answer is yes to a lot of those things. And there's a few things I think that have emerged that are new ideas and things for us to consider, as well as kind of organizing the toolboxes that have been created over decades for various things like teacher recruitment and retention, making sure that those tools are sharp and work together well, and that people are aware of them. Which is a characteristic of high performing systems in that they are systematic and coordinated and collaborative. And I think we've heard affirmations of enhanced collaboration here as well. I don't know if that's getting at some of your question.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is, if people are nodding, yes, we have that, or, you know, maybe we have to some extent something else. Is that going to be documented? Is that going to be laid out in a report from either the consultants or something that the committee produces so that we have that sort of self-analysis?
Mr. Chairman and Board Member Quinlan, yes, and the consultants they were hired to produce a draft and then a final report documenting much of what you're looking for. What we're currently doing, how we might do that better, and maybe additional things that ought to be considered. And that draft report will be reviewed by the commission at its December 15th meeting as a draft that report will be out in advance of that meeting. Public comment input will be welcomed, and then there'll be another bite at the apple at a January meeting of the commission as well. Those two meetings are going to be Zoom only, and that report process will be the focus of those two upcoming meetings.
Thank you, that's encouraging.
Superintendent Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. McCracken, if I may, I just want to jump in there. Also, another component that they talked about at the last meeting was there's also an audit being done on the OPI, which is more specific and on some of the data components. But something that I'm excited about as well. We're having these conversations in the meeting and that we're having those aha moments like, we're doing that, or, you know, we hear schools talking about, we know there's certain schools doing great work in those areas, or we know we have a program similar to one of the best practices already underway or starting at the OPI. So it's hard to sit there and not be able to, you know, want to share all of our information. But I believe there will be an opportunity and a time for that when we can talk about and reflect with the facilitators on the data that we have in those areas and crosswalk that. And also looking at the audit as an opportunity to show areas where OPI was maybe challenged in the past and we've already corrected course. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity to crosswalk that audit that is a backwards look with what we will have accomplished in this last year and see where we've already made headway and the data and other information we can provide to show that. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, thank you so much. As Pat indicated, our next meeting is, the next two meetings are Zoom only meetings. December 15th and January 13th, and you can go to the legislative website for information on all that. And these, like I said, these next one will be Zoom only, but then we'll be back face to face for our meetings after that. So let's move on to our next item. We are now on to item number 16. Information on Montana aligned to standards through year math testing and review of the statewide proficiency scores. And at this time, we'll invite Cedar Rose from the OPI to come forward. And for board members, this is page 256 of your board packet.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm also going to present some slides as well. So just a moment.
Pat, did your legislators have these? Okay, and so, and if anybody doesn't have those, we also have some hard copies printed as well.
And I have the capability of screen sharing. Thank you. All right, thank you for your set. Good afternoon, Chair Tharp, Chair Rexkin, members of the board and the Education Interim Committee. My name is Cedar Rose, for the record spelled ROSE, and I have the privilege of serving as the State Assessment Director with the Office of Public Instruction. Today, I am very excited to share with you two different things. First of all, overview of the MASC, Montana Aligned to Standards through your assessment, an overview of that program, especially as we go into the second operational year. Just a broad level overview, including the structure of it, how it works, and then diving into some of the reports that are provided and the cadence of those reports as well. And then after that, I will move into a report of our statewide assessment results coming out of our 2024-2025 school year. So to start off with MAST is Montana's modernized approach to statewide assessment. So instead of relying on a traditional summative assessment administered one time at the end of the school year, where results arrive often too late to do anything with after students have moved on to the next school year, the goal of MAST is to provide ongoing information throughout the school year to influence instruction, to make sure that information is getting to our parents, our teachers, our school leaders throughout the school year to really make an impact before those students move on. Students take shorter standards aligned testlets to match content that they're learning at that point in the curriculum. And this gives teachers and families that timely, meaningful data that they can use right away. MAST was designed with teacher input from the very beginning. Teachers, administrators, school leaders, specialists, all work together to ensure that the system reflected Montana values. When we talk about those Montana values, we're talking about alignment to standards, strong instructional utility, accessibility for all of our students, and then ensuring that we are using efficient use of our student and our class time. So across the year, students were taking several testlets in math and ELA that measure those core grade level standards. Testlets are brief and they allow educators to see how students are doing and progressing as that learning is unfolding throughout the year. The administration year is broken out into 3 windows. Each one of those are 8 weeks long. So on page 257 of your board packet, and also shown here, this is a table showing how those testlets are administered in each window. So each grade has 12 math testlets scheduled at the school level, and they are scheduled to best align with how those standards are taught throughout the year according to the school's local scope and sequence. Students take anywhere between 3 and 5 math testlets per window, depending on the school scheduling, and that school scheduling is completed in the fall, and that's what they follow for the remainder of the year. You'll notice that each window also contains 2 ELA testlets, an informational and a literary testlet, with increasing text complexity as the year progresses. Similar standards for ELA are assessed throughout the year, so educators and families and students are able to see the changes in students' performance as the year progresses. A writing performance test is also administered in window 2. Those performance tasks are hand scored, and those are based on calibration that was done by Montana educators in the summer of 2024. If you recall back after the pandemic, we really scaled back on our writing assessment for the Smarter Balanced. We thought it was really important as those writing skills for our young learners are developmental. We want to ensure that we have a high, valid, reliable assessment to ensure that those writing skills are in place. And so we were able to, through the development of this assessment, put in that strong writing performance task. And we really deliberately put it in window 2 to ensure that that feedback, those results could be put back in the hands of our educators and our school leaders before those students moved on. All of students in grades 3 through 8 participate in MAST, including students with receiving special education services, with the exception of students who are eligible for the MSAA assessment, which is our state alternate assessment. This consistency ensures that we maintain high aligned expectations for all of our learners across the state. Now, I want to spend quite a bit of time talking about the different levels of reporting. Reporting is what really sets MAST apart from other statewide assessments administered around the country. On page 259 has a table of available reports, and they're also available here. So you will notice we have 3 different types of reports that are available through MAST and a variety of different reporting levels. So we have testlet level reports that are delivered throughout the year as those testlets are taken. We have progress reports that are available at the end of window 1 and window 2. And then we also have through-year reports, which is more akin to your traditional summative report that is received after the school year is over, that aggregate up all of the results from all of the testlets. And that's what goes into those proficiencies that I will report a little bit later on. So if we look at our student testlet reports, which you will see up here, these reports are available the Thursday after the week that a student tests. These reports are available to teachers, and they're also available to families through the Kite Parent Portal for those districts who have decided to set that up. So teachers and parents are receiving the same report the week after a student tests. You will notice on these that these reports include performance levels, and these performance levels for these years directly compare to overall proficiency as determined through our standard setting process that we went through this summer. They also include for math misconceptions. These misconceptions are determined by how students answer and incorrectly answer items as they go through the test. So some students will have misconceptions based on their incorrect answers. Some students may not have misconceptions, but you are able to see through these misconceptions more broader level topics that your students may need additional support on. On the ELA reports, we also cluster our standards together into broader clusters since we are assessing more standards and report on the clusters. On our math reports, we are providing information directly on the standards that are administered on the testlets. So our testlets can have for math anywhere from 1 to 5 of those standards. And you'll see on the example provided that this testlet has 1 standard and we're reporting on the number correct out of the number possible for that item. These reports aggregate up to the classroom level testlet reports. So as a teacher, you are able to also every Thursday as your students are completing more testlets, maybe your class is fully completed, are able to see those reports aggregated up. Also on the student testlet reports, which are really, really powerful, is we are providing information on every item that is available on the testlets. Now, since this is a secure statewide assessment, we do not release those items after every administration, but we provide a description of each item that was taken. If the student received it correct or incorrect, and on ELA, we also have partially correct items, and then also which standard that item was aligned to. These testlet reports also aggregate up to the district and to the school level. It was very interesting listening to Dr. Lee talking about that importance of that school leadership. And this year we were able to move the release of those school and the district level reports to the end of each window. Last year, we were releasing those at the end of the year, but knowing how valuable that data is in the hands of our educational leaders, after each window, those district and those level reports will be released to our school leaders. This year, one of the new reports that we have available that we are really excited about is our progress reports. So after both windows 1 and window 2, families, teachers, our schools, and our districts are going to receive these progress reports. And these are going to estimate students' achievement relative to those grade level expectations at the point of the year based on how many tests that they have taken. So after window 1, we will aggregate up their performance and we will provide an estimation of their achievement based on what they've completed. We will also do this again after window 2, and you will be able to see those changes between that estimation in window 1 and that window 2. So this is going to provide a snapshot of where students are performing overall relative to grade level expectations before those final reports are generated after the final administration. And once again, these reports are aggregating up to the classroom, the school, and the district level. And then finally, our through-year reports. So these are reports that are very similar to summative reports. They are taking all of the information from testlets that were administered throughout the year and putting it into that final scale score and that achievement level. Something that sets MAST apart and its through-year model is there is not a separate summative assessment at the end. The work that students are doing throughout the year is aggregating up to their overall score. So there is not a separate assessment that students are taking again on all of the content that they have. So these are providing a full picture of student achievement throughout the year, and these are what are going to be provided for those statewide official results. So for the 2024-25 school year, these reports were available in mid-October. That was due to the standard setting process that had to happen in July. For this upcoming year, we're going to be able to release these reports earlier within the summer. So across all of our reporting for MAST, our goal is clarity, consistency, and usefulness. We don't want to provide more data, but we want to provide data that's going to be able to be used at the right time to really change our outcomes for our students. So MAST is built to offer that continuous insight into student learning compared to a summative assessment at the end of the year, really hoping to support our educators into responding to our students during the school year rather than after the school year is over. The system's through-year structure ensures that the information is meaningful for both assessment and for accountability purposes. Before I shift into our statewide assessment results, I do want to pause here for any questions that you may have about MAST. I know it was a broad overview about how it operates, the reports that were available, and how this system provides that timely information. But Chair Tharp, Chair Rexkin, I will stand for any questions that the board or the committee may have.
Go ahead, Dr. Rexkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on the kinds of reports that are produced. Will the teacher have an item analysis of this, whatever testlet has been given? So that teacher can look at that report and determine these kids are weak in this, these kids are strong in this, and so forth, in cross-referencing to the standards. So they have a good picture of what they need to work on with the kids? Or maybe for the high achieving kids, where they need to go?
Chair Thorpe and Chair Whitson, that's a fantastic question. So we are aggregating different types of data at different times. So you'll notice on that testlet level report that we have here. So each testlet is a small subset of standards. And so for instance, if you were a math teacher and you were looking at this classroom level report, you could see for your students and your performance levels, if you have a student who's in performance level, say 1, you can say, okay, performance level 1 on this set of standards, this is what I need to go in and I can work on. More than that, what we have heard is those misconceptions, which you are able to see which students had those misconceptions. That's what's been really valuable, because those are really able to tune in on specific skills that those students are going to continuously revisit throughout the year. Similarly, when we get to those testlet level reports that will aggregate all that testlet level information up, it's a great way for those teachers to go back and review and say, you know, throughout the year, these are the areas where my students were a little bit weaker. So what a great way to go in and analyze. Is this a curricular issue? Is this an instructional issue? Is this something that I need to pass on to my next grade level? So we are really trying to aggregate data in many different ways. To support that, we are also putting in interactive reporting this spring. That was a big ask of our educators, is we need this data to be able to be accessible at our fingertips. And so that's a big improvement that we're looking forward to in this spring. But absolutely, we'll be able to see, educators are able to go in and see at the standard level, at the cluster level, where their students need additional support.
Can I ask one more follow-up? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will PowerSchool play an important role in pulling all this data together?
Chair Rexon and Chair Tharp, I think that I will hand that over to Superintendent Hedlund.
Thank you. I'm excited to share this part. So yes, with the new data modernization project, we actually are connecting right now. I should say we, Lucas Rousey is doing a fantastic job on our team of connecting all of these components, and they are working with PowerSchool right now to connect the statewide assessments, as well as see if we can connect local assessments. Although we do have more districts moving away from some of the local assessments, particularly for students that may not need that level of intensive support. So we are connecting as many data points as we can and assessments, including the statewide assessment, to the data modernization system with direct connectors for the schools that opt to sign in. They will have full accessibility of all the tools of MTSS and risk analysis, which will compile all of these data points, including any other data points they have, whether they have a PowerSchool SIS or an Infinite Campus SIS, including attendance, behavior incidents, MAST scores. Hopefully we're working, that'll be the next step after MAST, local assessment scores. And it will even group students. So if there's students that are struggling with phonemic awareness, it will recommend them in an intervention group. So it will take out of all the 3rd graders in your building, the 5 that need support in phonemic awareness, and recommend that they be in a group, recommend the duration of the intervention, like 20 minutes a day, and provide the educator with a list of evidence and research-based intervention materials, resources that could be used. So we are very excited about having all of these systems come together in one platform. We will also be having all of this feed into the new report cards. We have a grant we've been able to put in place to update our report cards. So everything will be on one platform. It doesn't matter if schools have Infinite Campus or PowerSchool. And I will say one of my favorite things from today was hearing one of the local administrators say that MAST is going really well this year, and that the new reports are much more user-friendly and supporting the education in the classrooms. Thank you.
Board Member Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cedar, can you talk a little bit about what kinds of tools are available to parents to interpret what these reports mean? I'm looking at the example you gave us for a 3rd grade student, that the misconception is inconsistently using substitution to evaluate an equation. And I would suspect your average parent, if they wanted to try to help their child with that, would at least want to look at an example of what it meant to substitute to evaluate an equation. So what's available to parents?
Chair Thorpe, Member Quinlan, that's an excellent question. So I think the first thing that we've really worked on when moving to having access is, first of all, making these accessible to parents. This is the first time that our statewide assessment results have been directly available to parents. So as part of that, we've built out interpretation guides for all of our levels of reporting, including our TESA level interpretation guides. And so that does help dig in a little bit more in our districts whenever we provide, guidance out. These are the things that you should make available to your parents. That's obviously one of them. I think there's still a lot of room to go when it comes to those specific nitty-gritty details. A lot of this and where we are right now is just starting to open those conversations. And so I know for a lot of parents and districts, a lot of those conversations are happening at parent-teacher conferences. But we are definitely, there's room to grow when it comes to more resources for parents. And this last year, we've really worked on building out resources for educators, as that has been like our big call for how do we make this more accessible for educators, but definitely a place where we can grow.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. To what extent are you able to release previously used test questions so that a parent or a teacher could look at those?
Chair Thorpe and Member Quinlan, at this point, we are not releasing items. We are still going through that development process. Item development takes years for our large scale assessments, from the actual writing to all of the review to the field testing. So as we get further into more rounds of field testing, we would love to start releasing items. One of the things that we were able to release this year, we're moving from our practice tests that were more just tech-based, basic questions, to having practice tests, which that were openly accessible to all of our students, that were more content aligned. So you can go onto the MAST portal right now, and you can see that for every grade level, there's a sampling of items that more relate to the items that students are going to see throughout the year. And so as we build those items up, obviously we'll be releasing more things like that. And one of the things we've also talked about or in development with, of even if we can't release, a ton of items that have already been used, as this assessment is still being developed in terms of those items, is to create items that are similar. We don't necessarily need a field test because they're not as operational, but I think that's going to be a key component in that the reporting system that's more integrated and more that digital, that you could, hover over an item and see an item type that's very similar. So definitely something that is on the roadmap of development for MAST.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your good work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you, Steve. You want to go ahead and move on to the data?
Absolutely. So Chair Thorpe, Chair Rexkin, I am now transitioned into our statewide assessment results for the 24-25 school year. So these represent our official statewide picture of student achievement in mathematics, English language arts, and science. The slides for this section begins on page 265 of your board packet. So in this presentation, I'm going to first talk about the timeline for the MAST data release leading up to the public availability, as this is a really important component, and why that assessment data is coming in November of this year. We're also going to talk through some of our key considerations for interpreting MAST data results, as this is coming out of the first year of implementation. And the data for this are going to be organized by grades 3 through 8 math and ELA. Then we'll move into our grade 11 math, ELA, and science. And then we'll end with our grade 5 and 8 science. So briefly, I just want to outline the timeline for this year's data release, as it is later than our prior years when we usually release our data in September. The push November was due to the standard setting process of MAST that had to happen after our first operational year. So for our standard setting process, we were able to bring together 45 Montana educators together in Bozeman to analyze our operational data and establish those new cut scores. This process was facilitated by New Meridian, and then we also had Dr. Will Laurier from the National Center for Assessment as an independent observer for the process. Dr. Will Laurier's report, which is available on our OPI website, concluded that the process was professionally facilitated, featured strong educator engagement, produced defensible evidence-based cut scores. Our educators from that week highly reiterated that it was hard work, but they came out of there with such a stronger understanding of not only the assessment process, but also how those standards are relating to their own instruction. So it was a really powerful week. Our superintendent was able to join us for a welcoming, and it was just a really impactful week to have those educators together. Those cut scores were presented to the board in September, and then in October, we were able to release our masked score reports at the student, classroom, school, and district level, and those were released through the Kite Educator portal. On November 4th, we began our district embargo period for all of our statewide data, allowing our district leaders to review the results ahead of public release. And then on November 12th, that morning, all of our statewide assessment data were released publicly through GEMS. So it is important to emphasize before we go into these that the 24-25 results establish a new baseline for grades 3 through 8 in math and ELA. So as I shared earlier, math is different from our previous statewide assessment system. And instead of a single long test at the end of the year, math does use those multiple testlets administered throughout the year. Montana educators set those new grade-specific proficiency expectations during July in that standard setting workshop. But we did bring in multiple evidence sources for that, including historical Smarter Balance data to help support those decisions. So because of these shifts in structure, scoring, and performance expectations, the 24-25 results should be viewed as a starting point for measuring future growth and trends. So starting with our math and ELA results in grades 3 through 8, these results represent the first full operational year of MAST. Statewide participation remains high, as it usually does, with about 66,500 students statewide, representing about 98% of students eligible, and this is across both MAST and MSAA alternate testing. This strong participation ensures that the validity of the results and it provides an accurate picture of student performance across Montana. So while we are setting a new baseline for proficiency with MAST, I do want to provide a historical overview of our math and our ELA trends, along with the proficiency rate for the 24-25 school year. As you can see, about 45% of students were proficient in ELA and 37% were proficient in math. This is similar to historical trends where students continue to have higher rates of proficiency in ELA and math. This trend also continues into our 11th grade results as well. I do want to emphasize it is not a direct apples to apples comparison because of those cut scores, test structure, and the evidence used to determine proficiency levels are different. But I just did want to provide that context as our proficiency definitions shift in a new system. Also to provide a little bit of context as we are merging together both our MAST and our MSA data results in reporting. This shows the number of students and proficiency rates for all of the students, students who took MAST, and then students who participated in MSAA. So in ELA, students across MAST and MSAA performed almost identically in terms of percentage of students who are proficient. You'll see in math, there is a higher proficiency rate demonstrated by students who participated in MSAA, but even with that higher rate of proficiency, due to the low number of students who are eligible compared to the mass testing population, that impact on proficiency overall is minimal. We're going to dive into achievement. So looking at our 4 performance levels that we have as a state, which are novice, nearing proficient, proficient, and advanced. Math results reveal the highest rate of students are performing in our novice level. In ELA, more students are in our proficient level, which is contributing to that higher rate of overall students that are at or above proficiency. Similar rates of students performed in the nearing proficient category in math and in our ELA. And then also breaking things down by grade level, and this is a percent of students by grade level that are at or above proficient, so within the proficient or advanced category. Math proficiency, as you can see, is fairly consistent overall across all of our grade levels. In the past, if you recall, we've had a dip in proficiency between 4th and 5th grade that is corrected between 5th and 6th grade. So we're excited to see that the consistency and proficiency established in MAST will provide a consistent, strong baseline to monitor those future trends. In ELA, students in grade 3 performed lower than students in the subsequent grades. Third grade is also the only grade level where math proficiency was higher than ELA proficiency. So that is something we will obviously be monitoring as math progresses.
It's good to see you, Dr. Exton, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because we're seeing a trend with mathematics is kind of flat. Is there some thought about analyzing what are the gaps at third grade that seem to be holding up any growth in the others? Are you looking at that?
Sure, Dr. Chair Rexton, I think that now that we have, first of all, for math, we have a data set that we have never had before. So when talking about that scheduling, we now have curricular data and pacing data for all of our districts and our schools in the state. So as we are just receiving this data back, I think that is an excellent opportunity to start digging into some of those trends of looking at those TESOL level results and how it relates to our overall proficiency. So definitely something that we can look into as we are starting to dig into this proficiency data.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. From the most recent NCSL conference I just went to a couple of weeks ago, one of the takeaways that they gave all of us legislators from all across the country is with mathematics, the key marker is algebra. And what they encouraged all of us to do was to build a pathway from early on, the critical skills, weaving their way through the standards that can be looked at over time. I actually talked to Marie Judish about this, and that was the #1 takeaway that I got, because the marker for math is different than it is for English language arts. We have a goal, I have a goal by the end of third grade for proficiency. Because if they have the reading skills, they can get into science and history and all other subject areas that have complex texts. So I just want to encourage you to really look at that, so that if there are gaps in those early grades, that we fill those gaps with MTSS fast, so that those kids are not hung up all the way up to algebra.
Thank you for that. So the next 2 slides, we are going to look at our subgroup data. So these are looking at the proficiency levels and our achievement levels for statewide students who are white, American Indian students, students who are receiving special education services, English learners, and then students who are labeled of economic disadvantage. So first, if we are looking at our math subgroup performance consistent with national trends, we continue to see significant performance disparities between statewide averages for students who are American Indian, students receiving special education services, English learners, students who are experiencing economic disadvantage. These gaps are persistent and remain a clear area of focus moving forward. These are very similar to the same gaps that we saw within our Smarter Balanced Assessment. And then the pattern in ELA reflect those similar disparities. So across subgroups, we see gaps that mirror what NAEP is also highlighting as well within our state results, where Montana does have higher discrepancies than the national averages across most grades and subjects for American Indian students, English learners, and students with disabilities. The question of monitoring longitudinal state performance as we transition statewide assessments has come up quite a bit. So as we set a new baseline for MAST, we will still have those NAEP results providing those long-term trends at the state level. So our last main NAEP administration occurred in 2024. You can see this is the last year of data that we have, and those report results for both 4th and 8th grade and math and reading. NAEP will be administered again this year in the spring of 2026 around the state, with results expected in early 2027. So NAEP does provide an external benchmark of performance, and it will be valuable to compare statewide trends overall. But just as a reminder, NAEP and our statewide assessments have quite a few major differences. NAEP measures what nation students know and can do in various subjects, and it provides more of a common yardstick for states to measure student progress. And it also gathers some additional contextual information about students' educational experiences. And NAEP is really designed to measure content frameworks instead of state standards. And those content frameworks are developed by the National Assessment Governing Board, which is an independent organization. Our statewide assessments, including math, on the other hand, those measure students' performance towards required knowledge and skills as set and defined by our state content standards. And that's also in compliance with our assessment requirements in reading, language arts, and in science. So some of the trends that we are monitoring in NAEP are the consistent decrease in fourth grade reading, and also the rebound from 2022 to 2024 in eighth grade and fourth grade math. So just a few key points from our grades 3 through 8 results for math and reading, or math and ELA. Our ELA achievement is slightly higher across all grade levels, except for grade 3, which had the lowest proficiency rate. Math proficiency is relatively consistent across all of our grades. And again, we have those persistent subgroup performance gaps across all of our assessments.
Before we move on to high school, Board Member Asmussen, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Are there plans as we continue getting more data to track, especially in math, but probably in ELA too, but especially in math, to track I'm not going to say time on task, because that gives a lot of work for the classroom teacher, but time in the classroom and proficiency, so we can identify and remediate possible problems. I was thinking about this in relationship to yesterday, when one of the presenters said that they had 100% kids in their classroom that day. And that's just always just wonderful. 100% kids in their school that day. I think that was Lame Deer. And so that made me think about holes in math instruction and time in the classroom. Are there plans to look at that kind of data to give that back to schools?
Chair Tharp and Member Rasmussen, at this point, we're not actively looking at, like, in relation to math results. Like I said, these results are just very fresh to us. Obviously, we're going to do a deep dive with any of our statewide results to see any of the patterns we have. I know that we have a very big research agenda coming out of math. And so I think that's obviously something that we can look into, because as you're right, if students are not in the classroom, especially in those math, it's going to create those gaps. And that's one of the things that we've also heard for our challenges, is just when our students are out of the classroom, how do we ensure that we are getting back on track? So I think that is something great to look into.
I'm especially interested in early grades, and if you do anything, I'd appreciate a report. Thank you.
Superintendent Hedlund.
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate the questions that are coming in based on what do we do with this great information? So that is definitely where we have, not that these gals aren't experts in everything, but where we have our school improvement experts and our academic, our math and reading experts, literacy experts come into play, who are going to dive into this data, and we're going to work with all of you to put our plans in place, right? What are we going to do with PK3 literacy, 90-minute reading blocks? What are we going to do to increase math scores 3rd through 12th grade, increase opportunities in partnership with many of you to provide further education for our math teachers to earn those higher level skills, to prepare them to teach algebra and start with those components even earlier on if they're interested, offer those pathways. So those are definitely action plans that will come out of diving into this data. And before we move on past MAST, I just really briefly want to say that we appreciate the Board of Public Ed's Assessment Committee coming to the table and diving into MAST with us. We appreciate the feedback from the administrators. I appreciate the team, Tyler Kmeese, Deputy Berenger, all of them attending the MAST meetings and getting the input from the superintendents. Not always an easy job to take that feedback in, and the assessment folks, Cedar and her team, truly listening. There have been drastic changes made to MAST in partnership with the experts to make sure we kept the integrity of the test. Major changes to the reports so that they're more user friendly. But you know, a year ago, we were having much different conversations about MAST. It is leading the way in assessment across our nation. When we go to these national conferences, everyone wants to come up and talk to Montana about it, but that didn't mean that it didn't come with many challenges. There were many frustrated educators. There were a lot of folks that were struggling with this, and everyone has come together and been very solution focused lately, including the board's assessment committee. And so I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work that has gone into this and the effort to truly make the changes and listen to the feedback and input that was given. So I just commend you guys for all the great strides that you've made. And what we're hearing is, you know, it's not perfect yet, but we don't want to go backwards. So thank you for everything.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this morning on our tours, we heard a lot in the schools about what, why, and how. So with this new information, we have the what. I'm very interested in why American Indian achievements in math and ELA are so low. And also you mentioned more research into this. So is that the how that we're going to figure out what the problems are?
Chair and Representative, I really think the how in all of this is getting timely data in the hands of our educators and our educational leaders. I think that when we look at the disparities that we have, when we see the consistent performance that we have in Montana and not just with our statewide assessments, with NAEP, I think that one of the biggest components and why MAST has the opportunity to really change things for our state is we are providing that consistent bar for all of our students, all of our student populations across the entire school year. I think that is something that has been missing. I know that some districts use different district assessments. Those are not aligned to our state content standards. I really think that as much as we do the research and we provide the, you know, all the other things that we can do at the state level, the people who are going to make the biggest impact for our students are the people who are going to take this data, who are going to acknowledge where those gaps are and be able to leverage it real time with those students. So I think there is a long-term, you know, what do we do with this as a state level, at district levels? But I really think, and what we've worked on is how do we empower our educators to use this now? Because as we all know at the state level, things take time, right? Like if we spend another year like digging into this research, which we know we need to do, that's another group of students that have moved forward. So we are really working at the OPI with our teams across assessment, across our content team to really focus on, we have this data now, what can we do with it to impact the students that we have with our classroom? So I think that is the biggest component of how can MAST change for our students. And so that's why I think that across our agency, we really believe in this. And that's why, as the superintendent said, why so many states are watching, because they see the promise of empowering our quality educators and our quality school leaders with powerful, timely data, because it's going to impact our student outcomes.
So in the interest of time, can you give us yeah, we're running very short on time. Go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if some of that research might be related to attendance, learning styles, etc.
Dr. Rexton?
I will be quick, Mr. Chair. As a legislative committee, the data is really, really important to especially give to our governor. Because at least promising growth, as we begin to see some of that across this year, is critical. Because we all participated in a workshop where somebody from Vanderbilt or Georgetown University came and said, you really need to align your data to your dollars. Well, a lot of the folks from the decennial study were in that group. And their recommendations are gonna be absolutely critical for the kinds of bills and the funding streams that we can provide that really will get us to the place that we want to be. So I just want to reinforce that with you because they want, you know, if we can show our data on early literacy and targeted intervention and all those things, the governor needs to see it, and then this decennial study, who will meld with us eventually, will look at that data as well.
Cedar, can you give us a real high level view on what you have for ACT?
Absolutely. ACT you will see for our composite score, there's been no change from the last year and from the previous year, very minor changes. Very similarly for our trends for both our proficiency levels for math and science. I think one thing to note and to celebrate is our ELA achievement for our proficiency rate for ELA is the highest that has ever been historically. So we have over 54% of our students who are proficient in ELA on the ACT. And this is including both our ACT and our MSAA data, which is about just under 9,800 students statewide. For our grades 5 and 8 for math, you will see when we aggregate that data together, we have this a steady decrease starting in that 22-23 school year. That grade 5 decrease is more substantial than that grade 8. That grade 8 is about 0.5%, where we see that grade 5 is just about that grade 8% or the grade 5% is I think it's right around 4% for that, or 3% decrease. So high level, I can go for that. ACT, not a lot of changes for that, but we do see that increase in performance for ELA, which is really exciting to see that consistent high proficiency rate for our 11th graders for the ELA. And then for science, we are seeing a consistent decrease in both 5th and 8th grade. So with that, GEMS does offer many other data views, including aggregated by grade level, school, district. If you need any other information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm excited to provide any data that I can. And with that, Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Cedar. Board Member Rasmussen.
I'll be really quick. I just want to thank Superintendent Hedlund for her listening ear last year, because the changes in the reports that I saw are dramatic, and to my eye, which aren't very good right now, very useful. And so I just want to thank her for her leadership in that area and listening and making this something that is enviable and useful.
Thank you, Renee. And I encourage everybody to take a look at that GEMS dashboard. You can do a lot of stuff. You can plug in all sorts of iterations, combinations, county, district, grade levels, subject matter. You can see all sorts of different things. It's very powerful, and it is way faster than it ever used to be. It used to be you'd sit and watch it spin for a long time for data to load, and it works very well now. Any other last final thoughts before we let Cedar off the hot seat? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 17, and we have a public charter school panel and preliminary annual report data. And we've got several superintendents who need to come forward here. I'm not sure why Les is here. He should be, don't you have a football field to be preparing? So go ahead and invite the panel to come forward, and we'll hand things over to Executive Director Flynn.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As folks are coming to the table, I'm actually going to sort of set the stage. I'm going to turn it to Mr. McCracken to share a little bit about the slides that are in the packet. So he put together a PowerPoint. I know that some of the folks at the legislature maybe had a preview of this, but our board members have not. So he'll talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to turn it over to our panelists. Each of them are going to talk about their charter schools. Not only are they close geographically, but they all actually have very different charter schools. And so it actually worked out really well to have each of them come here and talk about the work that they're doing in each of their charters. So they're going to spend a little bit of time, not very much time, telling you about their charter schools. And then they're going to leave plenty of time for you guys to ask them questions and talk about anything that you guys want to ask them so that they can brag a little bit more about the schools that they're operating. So I'll turn it over to Pat, give him some time to talk about the information that you have in your packet, and then we can turn it over to our panelists. Thanks. And we are on page 285.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and McCall, and I kind of thought we were gonna tag team this slide deck.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I'll take like the first 2 or 3 and then, okay, and I'm gonna be very quick. These are somewhat dense slides that were really intended to be more of a reference, and this was a slide deck that McCall and I prepared for the Education Interim Committee September meeting, and if you remember, we got tight on time and we just punted, so now the ball's landing here. Real quick, in the 23 session, there were 2 sort of choice school bills that proceeded through the legislature. House Bill 549, which created the public charter schools that we're hearing about today, and House Bill 562, which created community choice schools. And both of these fall to the Board of Public Ed to have a lot of administrative responsibilities for. But 562 was litigated and it's still in the court's hands, and it's TBD probably sometime soon. We're not talking about 562 today since it's in litigation. We're going to focus on the bill that's in place and the charter schools that have been created. And very quickly, within House Bill 549, there were 2 application routes that were established. And one is where the local school district applies to the Board of Public Ed to create a public charter school within their district boundaries. There's a robust application and a vetting process that the Board of Public Ed members are intimate with at this point. And then an approval by the Board of Public Ed. And there are currently 22 public charter schools, all created under this Route 1 mechanism. Route 2 is when a community group within a school district first approaches a local school board to with an idea to create a public charter school, and for whatever reason the public school board just says, yeah, we're not interested in creating that. That doesn't fit with our current mission, or we're going in a slightly different direction. Route 2 provides an opportunity for that community group to go directly to the board and seek approval, and at which point there's kind of a complicated carving out of the territory of that, what would become a public charter school district, kind of a postage stamp district around the boundary of the school facility, and a separate governing board made up that's elected. And I won't go into some of the complexities of that. Suffice to say, there have not been any Route 2 charter schools created at this point. I think there's been 2 or 3 applications, excuse me. And then very quickly, there were 2 bills this past legislative session. One was an agency bill that the Education Interim Committee approved the drafting of on behalf of the Board of Public Ed. They're kind of one of those typical cleanup bills you get after a new program is started, the things that weren't considered, some of the vague aspects. That was cleaned up, and largely to do with timelines and some first year funding issues. And then there was a second bill that I think most significantly said the legislature is only going to provide a certain amount of additional new funding for charter schools, which is going to require the board to only approve the number of new charter schools that fit within that legislative appropriation. And that's where I was going to turn it back to you, Paul.
Great, thanks, Pat. This next slide talks about some of the Board of Public Education's roles and responsibilities. I listed them here. You'll see that we are to gather the charter proposals. We also are responsible for executing charter contracts with each of the charters. We are responsible for continuous oversight and monitoring, and I'm sure each of the folks here will talk about all of the different reports that we ask them to send us. It is many. We are responsible for also asking them to submit a performance framework, which is in addition to the accreditation process. that they're also required to do. The Board of Public Ed is also in charge of renewal and non-renewal. And also there's a whole separate responsibility for potential revocation. The Board of Public Ed is also in charge of a public charter school account. That's a state special revenue account that we hold in the event that there's funding that comes to us that needs to be allocated in a separate and very confusing way that doesn't just go to the school district. That can also happen, but that would be an account that we hold as well. I also put a couple links here for folks to access. We have a public charter school website that I think is really robust with tons of information. We also added a reporting tab. There's going to be a few different reports that we're required to compile. We had one that was done earlier this year that was a performance report based on that performance framework. You can go find that compiled report there. The next slide I have, I realize is incredibly dense. This is the timeline that we typically use to sort of manage and track charter applications and approval and denial processes as they come to the Board of Public Ed. This is the process we've actually used each year. We're on our third year now. We are required to have the application out by June 1st of each year. Typically, there's a application window. It's about a week long, and then we take applications. We'll be doing interviews in about a week's time, December 1st. I'll talk a little bit about that more tomorrow. And then the next, here we go. The next chart here talks about all the charters that we have that are approved. Pat mentioned 22. You can see all of them here and the years in which their first operating year was. So some are on year 2, some are on year 1. And then lots of numbers and info at a glance. I again will not read that. And then the last slide here is kind of like what's next. Lots of information on submission procedures, other data and information you can find about the process for this year's application. So all this is in the packet. You can find on the Board of Public Education website. I'm not going to take any more time, and I'm going to turn it over to the panelists. Please introduce yourselves and talk about your charters. Les, you said at the end, so we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I'm gonna have a tough time saying chairman. We'll get going here, so. The way this worked out is, I was busy and we were, having a virtual meeting. And I was late because I was busy working, and these guys all drew virtual straws and then gave me the short one when I got on there. So that's why, that's unfortunately for you guys, that's why I'm going first, but. So why start a charter school? I guess the next answer would be, well, why not? Or the question. So we had a chance to provide a unique and innovative opportunity for our students and families. So we currently have an alternative school. It's called FACE, Frenchtown Academy for Career Education. And when I first got there, I wanted to look into the charter school when I first got to Frenchtown, starting charter school with FACE. And it really wasn't worth it when we talked about it. So then the charter opportunity came, and so we talked about that again, and we really weren't going to have the numbers. In the seat behind the scenes was an opportunity to partner with Missoula College, and there'd been some discussions on this. And so that's how the Bronc Fast Track Charter began, was conversations between Frenchtown and Missoula College. So what we can do through our charter is students can earn upwards of 30 college credits. And I believe we're the only school in the state in which when a student gets the opportunity to earn those 30 college credits, they're actually given a general education certificate. Right. And again, I think we're the only school in the state. And I think there are others that are working towards that right now. A question you may have is, will those credits transfer? And the answer to that is yes. I think every school in the state of Montana. What about out of state? Well, here's some pretty good news. Pepperdine accepted our credits here just a couple weeks ago, and our people were pretty excited about that.
Our teachers have worked with, like I said, Missoula College, and they had to submit their transcripts. And they have to have 9 master level credits in their content area. In order for our teachers to teach the content. If we don't have a teacher in that particular area and the student wants it, they have a couple of options. They can drive to Missoula College, which I think is a pretty good opportunity in itself, or they can take a course online. So there's your true hybrid opportunity for those students to earn those 30 credits. I will tell you, when we applied for this, it wasn't without trepidation. And somebody, I think it was McCall, talked about the reporting. So the one thing that we worried about when we went to apply for this charter school was, okay, are we gonna put in a bunch of work and then not get awarded? The second part is, if we do get awarded, what are the logistics going to be? Because everybody was building this plane or building this ship as we went. So if we get awarded, then what is that going to look like? What's the reporting going to look like? What's going to be the burden on our people? The next thing is what I would say is, how is it good for our community? Just think, if you as parents and you have a child that's getting ready to go to college or is going to college, how beneficial would it have been for them to have 10, 20, 30 credits before going into that institution from a financial standpoint and from an experience standpoint? You also want to think about families that have financial burden and maybe not a lot of backing from an academic standpoint. Well, here's an opportunity for those students in the comforts of their own home, so to speak, be able to have the opportunity to take college credits in support while they're in high school. It's a pretty cool opportunity for them. The program, in the end of it all, will cost around $1,800 to $2,700, depending on the program, the coursework that they're going to take. It's for sophomores. Sophomores are when they can begin this track. As freshmen, they need to have a 3.0 GPA. And they need to be in good standing from a behavior standpoint also when they go to apply. So if you track that down, and we're talking about career pathways, somebody talked about pathways in here. Think about that middle school student, those middle school parents, and there's an opportunity for their child to be earning college credits while they're in high school. There's a little bit of motivation, maybe a kick in the pants from the parents and things of that nature for the middle school children. Not that middle school children need kick in the pants, but now, in terms of this sophomore group, so we're right around 100, just say roughly 100 students in the sophomore class. We had 46 students apply, 41 of them were accepted. What has it done for us? I think climate culture, it's improved. I'll also say this, in Mr. Tharp hit on it when he said, what are you doing here, Les? You should be painting a football field. We're in a sweet spot right now in terms of our high school students. We have some really good kids in the school right now going through the school. They're good students, they're good athletes, and we're able to capitalize on this. If we can catch it and contain it, these guys can be good, positive mentors and role models for our middle school students as they get to getting into the high school and getting in the high school experience. Innovative, we talked about, it's a hybrid schedule. Students and families can take advantage of taking college courses in the comfort of their own home, so to speak. And they can also travel and take online courses. Students have to navigate and get onto the Grizz portal. Now, I haven't seen what the Bobcat portal looks like. I can't imagine it being very good. But in terms of getting on and navigating the Grizz portal, sorry.
It's robust.
So anyway, you can get on the Grizz, they get to learn that while they have counselors helping them, while they have teachers helping them. They get to get on Blackboard, which is the platform at the University of Montana. They get to use that. It's in a safe spot. And then, you know, they have access to the University of Montana Library. You know, that's pretty cool. What are our challenges? Enrolling students is a little bit of a challenge for our counselors. Taking roll is a challenge because it's a high school within a high school, a school within a school. So I could be teaching a college course. I can have a student in that class that is not in the Bronc fast track, but just wants to take a college course, and they get to do that. And that opportunity wasn't present until now. If you want to think about the MUS scholarship, you know, our students are available for the MUS scholarship, all good, all fine. But what about the 3.1 or the 3.2 GPA student that isn't going to get many scholarship opportunities? And here's a way to, again, get some nice college credits under our roof. Challenges. So you think of the state of Texas, and this is our counselor was explaining this to me. So these are things that come up after you get the charter school. So if in Texas, academies are prevalent. So an academy at Texas, they could have 30 students in it. Okay, fine. Somebody could be number 29 out of 30 in that academy. That's still a good student in an elite program. In Montana, if one of our students in the charter school is 29 out of 30, they're going to look at that. Well, wait a minute. That's the bottom half. No. That's still in an elite program. But we're not used to that in the state of Montana. So we have to explain, no, that's a second high school. So that's a challenge. The NCAA was a challenge. The College Board is a challenge. So yeah, there's some challenges with it, but you know, some additional work for our clerk, additional work for our counselors, additional work for our teachers, principals. But anyway, it's been a pretty good program for our students. Good job. Yeah, nice job at the top that.
Pete Joseph, Corvallis. I guess it's really interesting, this process for Corvallis. We started from scratch. We were asked to be innovative and unique. So we started 2 separate charter schools. We call them academies now. It's under one umbrella called Rise Charter School. So we have a distance learning academy. I want to start there really quick. Corvallis. If you don't know much about Corvallis, it's a very diverse ideological community. We had the highest percentage of online, I should say, homeschool families recorded in the state. And we needed to find a way to connect with those families. So I spent my first year as a superintendent, the year prior to the advent of House Bill 549, connecting with all of our churches, our Pinesdale community, you know, just pretty good grassroots politics, trying to figure out what we were missing for 50 years. And because of that, I was equipped with the information that I needed to support those families in regards to writing the Distance Learning Academy. The other part to Corvallis that's super interesting is we've had a very high academic standard for a very long time. Corvallis had graduated, and we have graduated almost 100% of our seniors over the course of the last 10 years, yet only 40% were going to college. And some of the information we were getting back out of that 40% that were going to college, call it out of 100 kids that were graduating every year, 40% were going to college and only 25% were making it through. So what were we missing there? So I spent a lot of time speaking to parents, families, teachers, and we needed something to make sure that our students, when they're graduating, were aligned with jobs, aligned with where they wanted to go in regards to their futures. So we started the Pathway Learning Academy, and that has 6 pathways. I call it K-14 because really we're trying to align with junior colleges or anybody else that we can to move forward. We have 35 certificated pathways that kids can get by their sophomore year. And then we're currently moving in from internships to full-time apprenticeships, working with Bitterroot Health, multiple businesses around the Bitterroot Valley. So we could be and are placing kids here very shortly into full-time apprenticeships at 15, 16 years old. And then aligning the Pathway Learning Academy with the Distance Learning Academy in order for those students to receive a diploma and be college eligible. The Pathway Learning Academy for our homeschool families also has connected them into the Pathway Learning Academy. So we have multiple tracks within the charter school. We have track 1, which is all at home. We have track 2, which are hybrid schedules. We had a 20% increase in families that never wanted to have any part in public school now taking some courses face-to-face, K-12. And then track 3 is a diploma track where the students are aligning directly to a Corvallis diploma. And that track 3 also is special services for any of our special ed families that also may be distance learners. The incredible thing that's happened for us in Corvallis, our enrollment, when I first was superintendent, this is going into my 4th year, we were at 1,312 students and facing $1.5 million ESSER cliff. Just as our last February count, we were just at 1,600 students, which is an incredible benefit to our school community. Both of those charter schools are K-12. I think some of the challenges for us is we were asked to be innovative, and I probably pushed it too hard. We are a blended model. All of our schools and every single one of our kids and teachers must transfer into a project-based learning model that deals with career exploration in every single one of our pathways. It's been awesome to watch, but it's been a challenge. And I want to thank the Board of Public Education, Susie Hedlund, Call, all of the people at OPI. It has been a heck of a ride for us trying to not only move a community of 6,000 people and 300 employees and 1,600 kids, but it's been super beneficial. And I think the one thing that I can say for Corvallis is it saved our school district. So I want to thank the state of Montana, the initiative to write a bill that shows that public school can be flexible, it can meet the needs of their community. I've said this multiple times, I don't think there's any yellow brick road to any of these charter schools. Hamilton's 5 minutes from my doorstep, but you might as well be going to Mars. And I think it's just two separate communities, but yet with so many different needs and the ability for local control, our school system, and for me to be able to work with our people in order to build something that works for Corvallis has been unbelievable. So big thank you for my school board and our community. It's been we've got a long ways to go. We're in the midst of a curriculum revolution at our school, and we've done some amazing things. We got kids on VR headsets. We're doing aptitude testing and career exploration testing in 7th and 8th grade. I probably knew 5 or 10 types of jobs when I graduated from high school. Our goal is to get 8th graders to know 300 different opportunities and jobs before they enter into high school. So that's kind of the brief rundown of Corvallis. I cannot thank the state enough for the opportunity, because it really has changed the face of our school district.
Just kidding. Microphone works. Hi, I'm Micah Hill, Superintendent for Missoula County Public Schools, and just want to thank you for being here and giving us an opportunity to share a little bit. I was reading the quote behind you that says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." And hopefully you felt welcome here at MCPS today, and that you had an opportunity to experience some of the great things that are happening here, and a couple of which are our charter schools. We have 2 in Missoula County Public Schools, and our original intent and purpose behind that was to look for expanded opportunities for our students and our families that aligned with the legislative intent, that aligned with the constitutional priority, and that met our community's needs and values. And so we felt pretty successful in trying to set that up. Our 2 charter schools are different. You got to see Teach today. When we first stood Teach up, it was a standalone EL through 5 charter school, had its own building. Due to budget issues and different things, we had to make some adjustments and move it into one of our elementary schools. But That was just meant merely for cost savings. It would not be our first priority to have it sit within another school. The other school is Connect Academy, and Connect Academy was born out of our original coming out of COVID. We had the Missoula Online Academy, where we served over 800 students in an online setting for over 3 years. And so as we came out of that, one of the things that we recognized was that there was a need within our schools. We serve almost 10,000 students, and so how are we going to fit that need? And I wanted to share just a little bit of challenges, but also successes. One of the things that I heard from our community very early on was we were really concerned that this was going to be kind of for affluent families and that it would be somewhat limited. We were very intentional about making it something that was accessible to everybody. In our Teach Academy, never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that we would have 44% of our student population be non-white, or that 42% of that student population would be English language learners, which created a whole nother challenge for us. 74% are on free and reduced lunch, 13% are on an IEP or a 504, and 18% were considered unaccompanied youth or homeless. So when you look at what we presented for our community, it was something that I would not have imagined. Right now, we serve that school with approximately 5.5 FTE. There's a little bit of overlap between, say, like noon duties and some other ancillary positions, but doing it very much on a shoestring budget from an FTE standpoint. Connect Academy was actually both middle school and high school when we first started. We did not have enough student enrollment to justify running the middle school portion of it. We ran 84 students in the high school last year. Of that, 25% were free and reduced, 31% were on an IEP or a 504. And those courses are taught synchronously. So we have dedicated teachers who are online every day with students, face-to-face, cameras on, teaching our core courses, English language. We're teaching science, math, social studies, but we also partner with Montana Digital Academy to provide opportunities for students to access other electives online. The other great thing about it is it's a hybrid as well. So if a student wants to take ag, they can take ag. If the student wants to take band or orchestra, things that we can't offer like we can in a comprehensive high school, they have that opportunity as well. And I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dave Tennis. I'm the superintendent in Hamilton. It's not Mars, but it is close. And I have to, full disclosure, I inherited this charter school. So this is first year superintendent in Hamilton, but I've had the opportunity to walk around and observe and listen and talk to the administrators who were directly involved in the creation of this charter school. Really born out of two ideas. One, the idea of personalization, and two, innovation. And so we have in our middle school a charter school that is an alternative school, and it serves students that really are experiencing some major life challenges, oftentimes associated with mental health. So we have professional staff in that setting to help them with their success. And honestly, the hope is that they don't stay in necessarily the alternative track from 7th grade on, is that they can re-engage with their cohort a little bit further down the road. In that setting, the personalization idea is really enhanced by our partnership with the Digital Academy, with Ed Options, with flexibility within our teachers to go and serve those students as needed from time to time. And enroll them in those courses. In our high school, similar sort of situation, we have an alternative learning program that those students are credit deficient and not likely on track to graduate, and have various life circumstances. And honestly, many of our students in that setting are helping support their families. And so they're having to stay in school and work for part of the day. So we have a morning session and an afternoon session. The personalization comes with the flexibility of how they are earning those credits. Obviously, we're working with proficiency, but they're working at their pace. They are working either online through the digital academy or Ed Options, or they are working with staff that we send over that can help them from time to time, and we can build that into our schedule. So not only are we trying to keep them on track for the fundamentals of education and trying to keep them going with their cohort as much as humanly possible, the innovation is coming with our certifications. So oftentimes we are trying to match our students in the alternative school with some opportunity that can allow them to join the workforce. So we have this idea of this charter school that is both served in the alternative setting, and some of the students stay in the traditional high school. So we had 13 students earn a FFA drone licensure last year. We had 8 students earn their CNA. We had 8 students earn their construction certification, job site ready certification. We had a phlebotomist out of our high school. We are looking to develop some additional programs in early education, firefighters, and lab tech. Hamilton is rich with the GSK and the NIH labs. And so looking for those opportunities to expand the opportunities for kids is something that we are definitely working on. Just a quick story and then I'll be done. I walked through the alternative school the other day and sat down and talked to one of our students. And I said, so what's your plan? What do you want to do? And I almost fell out of my chair because she looked at me and she said, I want to be a special ed teacher. And I was so excited to hear her say that. And I said, we have to help you to do that. And so the next conversation was working with our administrators to, hey, let's start to explore the SPED tech option. Let's start to look into this and let's get this girl working somewhere with some of our kids. So exciting things. I'm really happy and excited about the work that this group has put together, and I'm excited to be a part of it and excited to see it expand and grow. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Board members, legislators, any questions? We've got some time here for you to ask anything you want of these fine superintendents.
Mr. Chair.
Deputy Barringer.
Thanks. I just want to say schools have always been really good at being told what they are supposed to do. When we had No Child Left Behind, we had to pivot from going from one way of school to teaching reading and math and throwing everything else out the door. It's interesting to hear what they're doing. We had the opportunity to go down and see what Corvallis is doing, and it is really cool to see their middle school kids and what they're doing. We were up at Kalispell and took in what they're doing there, and it's interesting to see young kids take charge of what they're learning with the oversight of their teacher. But it's also fun to listen to high school kids that have some say in what they're doing, that they also have a hybrid at their 2 high schools. And what they're doing there with their work-based learning is incredible. So given schools the opportunity like these schools were able to take charge of, I think we'll see some great things across the state. It'll look different. It looks different in all 4 of those schools, and it'll look different in other places. But what we're seeing, I don't know, and maybe your kids at Corvallis put on a really good show, but they are actively engaged and really enjoying the process of learning. So I think it matches what we're looking for in kids this year and this time.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, and shameless plug for our legislators in the room. There's nothing that prohibited these schools from doing this before.
But with the funding available through the charter school bill is what made it possible for them to put these things in. We have a question, Board Member Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my question's for Superintendent Hill. I see on the annual report that the Teach Academy or Teach School exceeded expectations for growth in among the subgroups for English, language arts, and math. And first of all, and then you've now described the demographics of the students attending the Teach Academy. So tell me what I'm sure you're all quite delighted with what you saw, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I operate with the philosophy of find the right people and then get out of their way. And provide them the support that they need to do the job that they're being asked and tasked to do. I think it's really intentional work around our model for education and teacher clarity, and really being able to identify what kids need to know and be able to do, and how we measure that, and really being intentional in our instructional practices, making sure that we're using high quality instructional materials, high impact teaching strategies, and there's a lot that goes into that, and it starts, a long time ago. It didn't just happen, over the course of 1 year with this particular school. These are things that have been in place at Missoula County Public Schools for years as we continue to try and grow and be better every day.
And where would you put the focus on the arts curriculum in that context?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've realized over time is that we have a great relationship with an organization called Spark. And they are embedded here in Missoula, and they have embraced this idea that the arts are just one avenue for teaching content. And we saw a little bit of that today, it'll be forever ingrained in my mind, the tens and the ones and all that kind of stuff. I'll be on the floor here in a moment, but really recognizing that students learn in so many different ways, and it's just one way to embrace that. But the fact that we do it at Teach and that we're super intentional about that, but we're also doing that in our other buildings as well. And so we're hoping to see the fruits of that effort continue, but it was really, really focused on in that building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Representative Denby.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So, to the panel in general, have you seen, maybe anecdotally, a rising tide lifts all boats? What does your charter school seem to impact the rest of the students in your district or schools?
It's a great question. For Corvallis, again, both of our charter schools are K-12. And the idea that we're gonna force, starting even in our early literacy program, that we're gonna start talking about career exploration and different careers and these 6 pathways. And we align the 6 pathways with the state and the SWIB board. So there's a lot of parallels there. The biggest thing that we're seeing is students who may never experience a lot of alternatives in regards to what careers are out there or even travel. We're kind of bringing the world through project-based learning into the classroom. And it's incredible the amount of comments I'm getting back from parents, just messages through Thrillshare, our Infinite Campus, emails, phone calls, thanking us for showing their kids a path forward. And then they're going home and talking about it, right? And these parents are having incredible conversations with kindergartners, with second graders, with their middle schoolers about careers and where they're headed. And I think that's been a huge impact school system wide and for our community.
Yeah, I was trying to quantify that for you. What I would say is when we went down this road, we were hoping to get 30 kids applying as a sophomore. And then this year we have 46 applying. I think it's also brought out ideas, and what you guys are hearing is you guys are hearing the highlights, and you're hearing, from a 10,000 foot level. But also and so our staff and our students, they're just coming to school and they're just going to work. But in terms of the wheels turning, we're also, again, we're in communications with Missoula College to begin offering certificates through the CTE program. And it is similar to what these guys are talking about, but it's gonna be different too. So I guess what it has done is it's got the wheels turning.
I will say, in the Hamilton community, what this has done is given these kids another opportunity, whereas before they may have not have had a place to go to be able to stay engaged and to finish school. So they would have made the decision to either stay or go. Now they can stay because we can be flexible and make things work with them and have the pace adjust to what their life needs.
Yeah, and I would just add that we're in year 2. Anecdotally, all signs point to these being successful and being a benefit for the students in the community. What I'm really interested in is to see where we are 5 years from now, and what that longitudinal look is for our students. Looking at a student who is in our early literacy program at Teach and seeing the growth and the readiness just for kindergarten and then into those future grades. When I was looking at the data earlier, I'm like, I can't wait for early literacy to start moving into that data so that we can show the true impact of what that means for our communities and our schools. So yes, to answer your question anecdotally.
Board Member Rasmussen, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember to unmute myself. I guess first of all, I'd like to compliment all of you on the depth of knowledge you have about your programs. It just shows that your commitment to them, which leads me to my question. You know, this is all well and good for the first 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but what are your plans? What are you putting in place for transitions for staff that will maybe not have the buy-in that this original set of staff had? How are you going? Have you thought about what you're going to need to do to make sure that these schools are successful long-term?
Ms. Rasmussen, Mrs. Lastmeyer. Hey, I'd like to throw it back at some people in this room. That is a great question. We need highly qualified and highly trained staff. And I think the buy-in will be there, but we need people in the profession to do it.
You're growing your own? You got to grow your own program?
No.
It works.
Yeah, I think I understood your question, but no, we don't have a grow your own program.
What I'm going to tell you is when I was in Bainville, we started Grow Your Own program about mid when I'm there. When I was there, so I was there 9.5, so about 4 years in or 5 years into my tenure, we started to Grow Your Own, recruiting people. And this year, of the 21 teachers in Bainville, 9 of them are locals.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But it takes time.
You didn't have to throw that back at me. I just threw that at you.
You best. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions or comments or legislators? Well, at one point, Pete, I leaned over and asked McCall, I said, how many superintendents in the state even know what the SWIP board is? That's a pretty impressive level of work. You don't count, Trish. So we really appreciate everything you're doing there. And while you're at the table there, Micah, I just want to thank you and Missoula County Public Schools for the use of the space. It's been a beautiful setting for us to be able to have our meetings. I appreciate that. The other 3 guys, he was given a box of chocolates from Parrot earlier today. So if he wants to choose to share, that's his call, but he does have it. So
I went into his office and he had taken a bite out of all of them.
Oh,
So.
All right. Well, we thank you for your work and all of your excellent contributions. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, guys.
Members, this brings us to our final item of the day, open discussion and final thoughts. And I will first lean over and hand things over to Dr. Exton. Any final thoughts that you might have?
Well, my final thought is some of the things that we funded are really bearing fruit in Montana, and I'm so proud of the work that we did. We have much more work to be done. Bills that we're gonna continue to carry back, they didn't quite make it, but it just makes me feel proud that we did such fine work. And it was all bipartisan work. And I'm very, very proud of that and of all of you out in the field that are implementing many of these bills and keeping your head up and doing some exciting things. So we're really proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. Other members? Anything to add? Well, this is a meeting, a regular meeting of the Board of Public Ed and a legislative committee meeting, so I do need to make sure we do open it up for any public comment. If there's any public comment in the room, we do have a few minutes here, and of course, always want to give the public the right to comment at any of our proceedings. Seeing none, Les, go Bronx. Good luck tomorrow night. McCall, please let us know what's the plan for tonight, what's the plan for tomorrow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following the adjournment today, recess for today, we will head over to a reception with our Board of Regents colleagues. Tomorrow, we will not be here, so please pack up your things. All of us actually will be meeting tomorrow at the Phyllis J. Washington College of Education in room 334 at about 8 a.m. So please plan to be there, including legislators. I think you're all joining us as well. So everyone at the table, please be there tomorrow at roughly 8 a.m. We will be kicking you out at about 8:30. Board of Public Ed members are going to be starting our meeting. And we will be going until about 11:30 or so. And then we'll be adjourning and heading over to the University Center, where we will be joining our Board of Regents colleagues to convene the Board of Education at 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Pat, do you have any instructions for your legislators?
Pretty much the same, the reception after adjournment here and tomorrow morning at the College of Ed. And we have a couple more sites to visit within the College of Ed, the Digital Academy and the Lab Preschool and the Safe Schools Center. And then we will head over at 10 o'clock to sit with the Board of Regents from 10:30 to noon in a joint meeting with them. So check your itineraries and call if you need anything.
All right, thank you. And I want to thank Chair Rexton and the Education Committee for joining us for this meeting. It's kind of first of a kind for me to ever be a part of. And it's my sincere prayer that during your time with the Regents tomorrow, you wish that you were back hanging out with us. And thank you for your continued efforts. With that, we will stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Good to see you guys.